Lobster Productions.
We are being hypnotized by people like this. Newsreaders, politicians, teachers, lecturers. We are in a country and in a world that is being run by unbelievably sick people. The chasm between what we're told is going on and what is really going on is absolutely enormous.
Oh yeah, dude. There's some Nephilim.
It's like we all know what's going down, but no one's saying shit what happened to the home of the brave. These motherfuckers, they controlling us now, and no one's talking about how they made us modern day slaves. And everybody's just walking around, head in the clouds and won't awaken to a dead in the grave. But then it's too late, we need to be ready to raise up. Welcome to the end of days.
Everybody is slaves, only some are aware that the government releasing poison in the
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Nephilim Death Squad. I am David Lee Corbo, aka The Raven. That is Top Lobster, the father of disinformation. Before we get into today's guest, a little reminder, sometime around the 30-minute mark, we'll be going live exclusively to patreon.com/Nephilim Death Squad. Sign up at whatever tier you'd like. I can't help it. And you'll continue watching this show and engaging in the live chat, gaining access to episodes before they release to the general public, which I dare say has been confined to about a week and a half tops is when the episode will air. But if you're hungry for more content, it awaits you over there. Also, when we drop Bohemian Grove tickets, you guys will be having first dibs. There's also discount codes off of merchandise from toplobster.com, or so says Top Lobster. He says this will happen. Eventually.
No, they'll be there.
Keep an eye out for him. All kinds of super dope designs over on toplobster.com. The Mother Horse Eyes one. Really, really, really horrifying.
Horrifying.
I don't like that it's animated.
We're going to do the deep dive. I promise we'll do our deep dive soon. Let's get into the guest.
That's a lot of promising, dude.
I'm excited about the guest.
Okay, well, joining us today is Sean of Kingdom in Context. Sean, for those who may not be familiar, you just knocked him out, or he accidentally backed out of the thing. There he is. He's coming back. I think he must have hit the refresh button.
He's like, I'm out of here. I hate these guys.
He's like, psych, we're out of here. Sean, before we get into the conversation, let everybody know where they can find you.
Hey, I'm Sean Griffin at Kingdom in Context on YouTube, Rumble, and Facebook.
YouTube, Rumble, and Facebook. That's Kingdom in Context. Okay, there we go. There's his YouTube page. And we were talking before the show started. You cover a lot of biblical content. What were we talking about? There was a bit about the Trinity there. There was what was Jesus doing in heaven, or what is he currently doing, and the potentiality for sacrificing.
Yeah, about his priesthood. A very, very interesting, I wouldn't say, I guess, niche, but definitely controversial subjects within the Christian community that need to be talked about.
I think he said, I promise we're going to make some people mad. It's something of that effect, which happens a lot on this show.
I don't know what this means, but it's concerning. I'm so surprised he came on with you guys.
Anytime anybody respectable comes on, I am also surprised. And that happens pretty often, and I don't understand why. I think people are trying to make us better. I think that's what's happening here. So maybe Sean can help us in that a little bit. What do you want to get into today, Sean?
I mean, you guys seem to love to talk about controversial topics, so that seems to be all we talk about. So really, the smorgasbord is open, but I do have some things prepared from my Investigating Babylon in 42 series, which are our most popular things people know us by. And so those, we talk about Nephilim, fallen angels, pre-flood giants. We talk about, the science behind that. I talk about the symbolism of all the ancient cultures and how it's synchronous, and them worshiping the same gods by different names. To whom the Hebrews would call Satan and unclean spirits. We talk about it all, and I go into a lot of deep diving historical stuff, and I think there's so many ways we could go. What are you guys interested in?
Well, what you just said there is kind of interesting. So let's just start on some easy stuff for the people. But you said what the Hebrews would call Satan or unclean spirits. Right there, what they would call Satan or unclean spirit. Do you think that Satan would be the title, or is this an actual entity?
Yeah, from my study, it seems the Hebrews believe that Satan was an actual fallen angel. He's not like a malevolent force. Some people in like a more New Age type of mentality, they believe like evil is not an actual person or persons of spiritual beings, but instead they think evil is just a malevolent force out there tempting you to do bad against the universe type thing. But the Hebrews believe Satan was an actual rebellious angel named Azazel. You see this back in the Book of Enoch. carrying forward. This is why in Leviticus 16 on the Day of Atonement, they literally placed the sins, the high priest would place the sins on the Azazel goat and send them out to the wilderness. So it was like an established concept within their theology that Satan was an actual person, an actual, rebellious angel, and that he doesn't die. He, like all angels, they can only be killed in the lake of fire. And so he is the one seeking whom he may devour, going to and fro on the earth, as he talks about in the book of Job, chapter 1 and 2. And apparently can still even ascend to heaven from time to time when he wants to, like he does in Job 1 and 2. And so this is an interesting concept as far as he lives on the earth. He lost his first abode, as Jude talks about, Jude 1:6. The angels that rebelled, they left their first habitation during the days of Enoch and the days of Jared. He was a part of that group, except he was not sent away to Tartarus like the rest of them. He's the only one that's left out. And I can go through that scripturally through a whole bunch of different passages to show that and then after the flood, he is given control of the remaining unclean spirits that were the disembodied giants. And that's why in the New Testament, all you see is Jesus encountering Satan and unclean spirits. Jesus is not encountering a whole bunch of other angels. He's encountering demons that try to infest inside of people and a rebellious angel who tries to tempt him in very wild ways. You guys, like, that's, I doubt you had time to watch the fullness of our Best Game Babylon series, but that's kind of where it coalesces to in part 21 is the temptation with Christ and Satan tempting him, and where that possibly took place, which I would consider to be the actual dwelling place of Satan currently. So there's a question that people don't ask this in church. Like they always just like assume Satan as a background character, trying to tempt people, but no one ever asks, well, wait a minute, if he's a real entity, like where is he?
In the church there would be you would maybe butt up against someone who would say the obsession with these things is not the point. And I'm not saying that looking into it is an obsession, although they might characterize it that way, that just looking into the dwelling place of Satan, who are the real adversaries that we're facing right now, what entities would be in Tartarus, what would be their names, things of that nature, that this is an unhealthy focus and that you should just be focusing on the gospel, spreading the good news of the coming of Jesus Christ. What do you say to that?
Well, it seems like Christ is our ultimate example of how we live our life to God, right? We're told in 1 Corinthians 11:1, we should imitate Christ. In Ephesians 5:1, we should imitate God, the Father. So Christ only did and said what his Father did and said. So those, it seems to be the example that we go after. Luke 6:40, when the disciples fully trained, he's like his master. So we're training to be like Christ. And Christ did not shy away from the topic when it presented itself, right? He was well-rounded in his knowledge of scripture and the history of what the Israelites believed and taught through the law and the prophets. And so I think, all, like he says in Deuteronomy 4, or excuse me, he says in Matthew 4:4 to Satan himself, he says, all scripture is God-breathed and useful. He's talking about we should live not on bread alone, but every word that comes out of the mouth of God. So if the mouth of God through one of the prophets told us some of this information, then that should be beneficial for us.
Yeah, I have another question. Some people, well, I mean, we've heard on the show that the Satan of Job, the Book of Job, is like we have a hard time thinking that that's the same Satan that's walking around now, not just because of the time frame, but because of his ability to hold court with God. So that's why I float the idea around of like, is Satan a title of an angel, like a job title of an angel for God to tempt mankind? But what is that? How does that relationship work, that he can hold court with, he can approach God in heaven, but the others are cast out? And like, why does that work?
Yeah, what you made an interesting insertion there. When do you guys think that Job took place? The lifespan of Job?
It's the oldest book in the Bible, right? So I don't know exactly when, but I know it's pretty old. So when exactly does that fall?
So in the Septuagint, the very last verse of Job is verse 17, Job 42:17. It actually tells you who Job is and when he lived, but the Masoretic leaves it out completely. It's the weirdest thing. Yeah, we've actually done a whole series on our channel. I should say a whole video going through all the, like, side by side, the Masoretic and the Septuagint translations of Job and showing all the differences. And this is like the largest difference. And it tells you he's a directly fifth generation from Abraham. He's a son of Edom. He is a son of Esau, basically. And and 5th generation down from Abraham. So that gives us his lifespan, his time period. He married a woman from Arabia, who was, I believe, a descendant of Ishmael, and so he's both a son of Esau and married, one of his cousins through the line of Ishmael. So he's literally Abraham through and through, and he's about 5 generations down from Abraham. So we're talking basically like at the tail end of the Israelites in Goshen before they came out in the Exodus is the lifespan of Job.
Interesting. So, all right.
So Satan was definitely around because the Hebrews believed that Satan was Ra of ancient Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
He was Zeus of the Greeks.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about then the bloodline of Esau? Because there is I guess the conversation, I think is that Genesis 3:15, where they're talking about
this idea of like the serpent seed.
Yeah. There's that split in Isaac's children where you have Jacob and Esau, and this guy's very hairy. Some people think he might be a Bigfoot. And God hated Esau, and it's like, well, why? There's so much going on that's not very specific, but maybe you have some insight.
Yeah. We've done a deep dive on Esau, and he is a child of Abraham, and so I think he falls into the same concept like all of us, or he's a child of, I should say, of Isaac. He falls into the same concept like all of us, right? If we are living our life in faithfulness to God till death, we're considered good or righteous in the sight of God. But if we turn our back on God, then we'll be hated by God. This is why in Deuteronomy 7, verse 10, God says that I will repay everyone who hates me to their face. So people can hate God, and he does view them as them hating him, and he hates them because of their attitude and behavior. So this is why I know in a general sense, God loves everybody and wishes that none should perish, but that all should come to salvation. But some people, the lake of fire is there for a reason. Some people are going to be thrown in because they rejected God, and he cannot bring them in with love into his eternal kingdom because they rejected him. So he's then treating them with disdain, contempt, and hatred and judgment. And that's the language we get of Esau because he turned his back on God and actually tried to kill Jacob. And we see this in the Israelite writings of Jubilees, which is still in the Ethiopian canon and Dead Sea Scrolls and things like that.
Our show name, Nephilim Death Squad, is for some people a full stop, and that kind of goes towards this idea of whether or not you believe in giants or you believe in the sons of Seth, right? That's kind of where the delineation is drawn, and so for some people, in their interpretation, there's no room in the conversation for the offspring of fallen angels and human beings. They'll say things like, angels are spiritual beings. They don't have reproductive organs. They can't engage in that sort of thing. And of course you can say, well, there is instances where they actually sat down and ate, right? And so it depends. We would argue what form they're taking, that they can take a flesh and blood form, or so it would seem. What do you think about that idea? Or what, better yet, what would be your argument to those people?
Yeah, I think the idea that angelic beings, which we are called ministering spirits in Hebrews 1:14, the reason why we're so confused about them and churches rarely teach on them is because most seminaries that train pastors to lead churches and since the last 150 years, they ascribe to something of classic theism. I don't know if either of you have been to seminary or Bible college of any sorts. I have, and it's a classic theism is basically a mixture of Neoplatonism and Gnosticism. And so classic theism holds this idea that all spiritual beings are incorporeal and immaterial, and that they can't interact in the material world. And as a result of that, it causes a great confusion when we're reading the scriptures and we see an angel show up in Isaiah 38, 185,000 men in one night. And you're like, well, he sure interacted in that time, didn't he? Or like in Genesis 18, right? He comes, the 3 men show up, and 2, we heavily assume 2 of them that go down to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, that they're angels, but yet they just shared a meal with Abraham and his family previously. And so it's like, did that food just like fall through their bellies to the ground? And like when they got up later, Sarah noticed a bunch of food on the floor where they were sitting. No.
They're like, this is just pleasantries. We're just engaging in this to make you guys feel comfortable.
Right. Yeah. Was it some kind of mystical vision where Abraham and Sarah thought they were eating food, but really whenever they left, there's just a whole bunch of food on the table uneaten. No, no, these are real entities. That the Father, again, we're talking about what the Bible describes versus classical theism, which imports these ideas from Neoplatonism and Gnosticism of the spiritual world being incorporeal. That is not what the Bible describes. The Bible describes a very corporeal, very physical substance of the spirit world just being at a higher level of capacity than the world of flesh and dirt. All right. So, we're made of the dirt, Genesis 2:7. I would put forward, and it's kind of a separate discussion, possibly a longer study with you guys, but I would put forward that spiritual beings are made out of the breath of God and water. When you do a study on water, water is eternal. Water it can't be created or destroyed like it can be created, but it can't be destroyed. It just changes forms. And this is the behavior that we see exemplified by angels when they show up. Even Christ himself, once he's resurrected, as 1 Corinthians 15:45 now calls him a life-giving spirit in his new glorified body. Remember in John 20, he just like shows up in a locked room. They didn't open the windows of the doors to let him in. He just showed up and startled everybody. They thought he was a ghost. And then he's like, no, touch me, touch me, Thomas, touch me. Look. And then he even asks, do anybody got some food? And he eats food in front of them. Right? So he's exemplifying that he's real. He's touching them. He tells Mary, don't cling to me. You know what I'm saying? But he's called a life-giving spirit.
Well, Sean, how does this Gnosticism and what do you say, Neoplatonism, how does this get inserted? Because in my opinion, this is where the church misses in general. And then, like all the way down the line now, we have this idea of this is kind of what the show's about, where like it's people who have had crazy experiences. Like, well, we can't explain this. Like people are abducted by aliens, or we're having dreams. You're being pulled out of bed. You name it. All kinds of.
It's insane that you would go to these seminary schools and that they would teach you this. And the examples that he gave seem to really
fly in the face of.
Yeah, and it's like, how do you build an entire system off of indoctrinating people and teaching them this and then sending them out into the world to go and.
But that's exactly what you'd want to build if you want to have kind of what we have today, where it's like you're ignoring this very real supernatural physical side of things. But how does it get inserted in the beginning there? What happened?
Yeah, if you have a chance in the future, I know you just became familiar with my channel, but I interview pastors, PhDs, and professors, and I ask them these type of questions. And
what do they say?
Oh, bro, it's a gamut of nonsense and argumentation, and like it just depends on who I'm talking to. But like I've had some of them just won't answer me. Like they just refuse to answer me because they have nothing to say. And
I would imagine that their seminary schools have taught them some sort of like debate tactics or like a way to skirt around that. Like that's got to be something that's commonly presented to them. Oh, yeah, that's pretty good. That's easy.
I mean, if it's new, it's like I get the inclination, like hit it with the stick if it's new, because some of this stuff could be sort of dangerous.
Like, you're dealing with like Christ consciousness and all of this stuff that was very common right now, and you can see the danger that it poses to Christianity or a belief in Jesus Christ. I get that, but I mean, this is like sources straight from the Bible, where it's like Jesus ate some food, dog, and these angels ate some food, and also that one killed 135. Like, come on, man, that's like that's a real mental gymnastics. In other words, to dodge that. That's fascinating that it could ever have stood.
Yeah, think about just the end of the story in general. Like the promise of the end of the Bible in Revelation 22 is that the throne of God, the water of life, comes out from under the throne of God and creates a river. And then along both sides of that river grow trees that produce fruit 12 times a year. So that's once a month. And then the saints, Revelation 2:7, are promised access to eat of that fruit. So like in God's house, it's a real river. There's real trees growing. That means there's ecology. That means there's dirt. The trees aren't just growing, floating. Just growing with their roots extended down, floating in the air. Like this is real, guys. So I think that the Neoplatonism and the philosophy that comes in, traditionally it's more Gnosticism. This idea that the creator, which the Gnostic Christians back in the 2nd century Alexandria, they referred to the Almighty God as the source, because that's a Platonic term for the ultimate creator. We see that also in Neoplatonism around the 3rd century. And so they refer to that as the source, and they say the source cannot interact in the physical creation. So therefore, he had to create a secondary God, the Pleroma, who then comes in and creates everything, right? So that becomes a serious problem because the Bible itself describes the Father's house, the Almighty's house. You remember in John 14, Jesus said, I go to prepare a place for you. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, when I've told you, and I will come back and receive you to me. And then at the end of the book, we see the tabernacle of God. That means the house of God coming down out of heaven, the New Jerusalem. So that means Ezekiel 37, the Father promises, I will tabernacle on the earth with mankind. So then the Gnostic and Platonic view of God is that how could he possibly do that? He's immaterial. He's unseen. He can't be experienced. He has to create other things for us to experience him by. So you're going to find that if you ever go to a pastor and you say, hey, does God, the Father, not Christ, not the resurrected Christ, the Son of God, but does the Father, does he actually have a corporeal form in which, like at the resurrection, when you're taken into the kingdom of God, will you be able to walk up to the Father and give him a hug? You'll be surprised how many pastors will say, oh, well, of course not. The Father's not, you can't actually experience the Father. Like I've actually done debates with Christian apologists, very popular ones on YouTube, that we debated this exact topic, you know, and I would put in their face, I'm like, here's Matthew 21:10, where Jesus says the angels in heaven stare at the face of the Father. What do you think about this, Mr. Pastor, Mr. Apologist? How do you view this? Oh, that's Jesus. I say, wait, you're saying Jesus on the earth, in the flesh, during his ministry on earth, is teaching people that the angels in heaven stare at the face of the Father, but he really just meant to say they're staring at Jesus also in heaven at the same time. And he said, yes, because the Father doesn't have a corporeal body. So it's like this weird modalism type. And this guy's a staunch Trinitarian, but he's explaining modalism. And so they trip themselves up because they're holding true to philosophy and not to the plain words of Scripture.
That's interesting.
Doesn't the Bible imply that one of those three angels that visited Abraham was God?
Yeah, it will. This is common. Like this is like 2nd century Christology teachings that they start saying, well, it was God visited Abraham, you know, and they'll say, well, since the Father cannot be seen, lest people would die. Remember, like Exodus 33 tells Moses, no flesh can see my face and live. So then then they'll just assume, well, it must have been Jesus showing up to speak with Abraham. I would put forward that it wasn't. I would put forward that ancient Israelite literature clearly tells us it was angels of God that spoke with Abraham. The entire Book of Jubilees teaches that it was literally the angels of God that went to Abraham and spoke with him. And it specifically was, one of them was Michael, whom also is the angel in the bush in Exodus 3 as a representative of a God. And that Hebrews 1:1 is true, that in many portions, in many ways, through the prophets, God spoke to us. But in these latter days, verse 2, he spoke to us through his Son. But 2nd century Christology, which is like, you know, the Son of God Christology, it tries to teach that Jesus was everywhere in the Old Testament at all times, speaking and teaching and leading, and that he was the angel of the Lord that led them out of Exodus, which had entire conversations with Moses, giving revelation, helping him understand the law, helping him adjudicate the law, like in Numbers 25, where they're adjudicating property rights for the daughters of Zelophehad. Like all these things that would just completely destroy Hebrews 1:1 and 2. And in fact, it would mean that Jesus was everywhere in the Old Testament, talking and doing stuff at all times, and that he was already here. You know what I'm saying?
That's actually something I've heard that a lot.
Well, how about in the book of Daniel, right? When they're in the fire and the fourth figure appears and they're like, that's the Son of God right there.
Yeah, is that
like,
what he said? Or he said the Son of God or the Son of Man?
I don't recall, but it's something like that.
Yeah, Nebuchadnezzar goes, we sent 3 people into the fire, did we not? And they're like, yeah, man, we
There's
did.
someone else
and
there.
there's like there's a 4th man, and he's
like
the
the Son of God.
He is like the Son of Man.
He is like the Son of God.
What
Is that what
was
says?
going on there?
He says he's like a Son of God. Yeah, because the ancients, I would put forward that the ancients knew that there were the pagan nations outside of Israel, they would call them like the archons. This would be the celestials above the firmament that were outside of creation. Like they knew that there was something else there. And I actually get into this in my 42 series about the ancient writings of ancient Egypt, specifically where Satan, Ra, is talking about how he was created from above the waters. They believed that the ancient earth was encompassed by Nut, which was the personification of the waters above the earth, that they would personify as a female deity called Nut, and that he was Ra declared that he was from above the waters, created from the archons above that, but then he's supposedly, surpassed them in glory and superiority, so that mankind should worship him. And so they all had this understanding of there were archons, there were celestial angels, beings that are holy ones. They would refer to them as holy ones or watchers on occasion, like in Daniel also. You know what I'm saying? So that's where I don't think that they're just automatically assuming a pre-incarnate visitation of Jesus every single time.
Sure. I mean, what would they call them? Like B'nai Elohim? That does mean like sons of God, right?
Yeah, that's interesting, because it is kind of like why would Nebuchadnezzar know, like, dude, that's fourth dude looks like Jesus.
yeah.
And like, what do you mean?
No, they were accurate. It's definitely some sort of an angel.
Hey, don't get me wrong, guys. I grew up in church and stuff like that, interpretations like that, they'll preach, right? They'll get people's attention. They're great to preach from. They're great for altar calls. But when you want to be, specific, when you want to be serious and responsible with what the text is and the history of the text, some of these interpretations have to fall by the wayside. It doesn't denigrate the Son of God and his sacrifice for us and what he does for us now. It doesn't, or what he's going to do and bring peace to the world in the future. It's just trying to be faithful, because if you constantly start reinterpreting, retroactively injecting things from new interpretations, you start getting a lack of continuity with other places in scripture.
That's
right?
Interesting.
And so because it's all one story. It's not like a bunch of different, it's like 66 books, but like it's just one central story, So I think I missed one of your questions, Top. You asked about,
it's going to be, that's how it's going to be, man.
I think you asked earlier about how can Satan go back up to heaven?
Right. Yeah. The idea of him. Yeah.
Yeah. So Jude 1:6 talks about how the angels who left their first estate, they're now reserved in chains of darkness for the day of judgment. We get that whole story, not just in Genesis 6, 1-4, the rebellious sons of God, but you get it in great detail in the Book of Jubilees and Enoch. And it's all
in the Book of Enoch. In the Book of Enoch, they ask Enoch to kind of like be an intercessor for them to God, to like, go ask him for us.
Yeah.
And so I think the assumption there is like they can't, or maybe they just know better to approach him.
Like they were too ashamed.
Yeah, I don't know. Let us know what are you thinking.
Yeah, so in chapter 9 and 10 in First Enoch, you'll see a separation of judgment. So you'll see that Azazel is spoken to differently than Samyaza and the associates with Samyaza who took wives. So Samyaza and his associates, the bulk of the 200, except for Azazel, Samyaza and the rest of the boys, they took wives, created the Nephilim, a whole bunch of problems. But Azazel's not lumped into that group. He's ascribed other types of failures and sins, but he's not said of the group that took wives. And I think that's the big distinction, is that's why he wasn't locked away in Tartarus and is left out as the antagonist to whom we must resist.
Do you think that
God's law is like, I guess the last point I just want to make on that, just to express, he still cannot go back up there, right? This is why in chapter 15 of First Enoch, it is giving the return answer after the rebellious watchers are crying, and they write their petition and give it to Enoch, and they're like, please give this to him and see if he'll be merciful to us. And then the Almighty's word comes back, no mercy for you, no rest for the wicked. And because it's like kind of what Christ said, to whom much is given, much is expected, right? So these are like angels. They watched creation happen, according to Job 38, 1-7. Like they were shouting for joy as the foundations of the earth were being laid. So they were already there when they watched everything happen. They're, Hebrews 1:14, they're supposed to be ministering spirits of the Father sent to earth, to us, to help those inheriting salvation. But they abused their mission while they were here, took wives, taught sin, created all manner of chaos and lawlessness. And the Father was like, no, I'm not giving you. And if you actually look closely in Enoch in the first 15 chapters, it wasn't like the next day, because clearly it takes time to have a child, right? It takes time to take a wife, it takes time to have a child. But you'd already had mass lawlessness happening for what seems to be a couple hundred years before the Father sends the decree down from Enoch, like, hey, you guys can't come back home. It says in chapter 15, you were created for the heaven, high, holy, reserved, and set apart, but you've defiled yourself with the blood of women, and it says that you cannot live in heaven again. So even Azazel lumped into the judgment, but yet specified with different types of transgressions, even he is told he cannot come back home again. But that doesn't mean that he can't present himself to accuse the brethren from time to time. He just can't abide there because the word abode has a definition, right? The word habitation has a definition. We see this same type of concept in the prophecies of the future house of God coming down to the earth, where all nations are able to come to it for the festivals of God, but they cannot abide there. They cannot live inside the house of God unless you're resurrected. And this is why those in the first resurrection, Revelation 21:7 and Isaiah 54:17, they inherit the house of God. But those who are spared in the sheep and goats judgment as sheep amongst mortal mankind under Christ's authority are repopulating the millennial reign, and they're able to interact with the house of God because they're supposed to, and they can come to it to visit, to celebrate the festivals of God, but they just can't stay long term. They can't live in there. And so this is, again, I mean, I would suggest this is what we're seeing in Job chapter 1 and 2, when it says that, in due time, the angels came forward to present themselves to God. Now that's a principle that you see in God's law, that all the men of Israel are supposed to submit themselves to God to present themselves 3 times a year. And all the angels are all men, and they're of the family of Israel, which is the family of God. So if an angel, if a ministering angel is someone that comes down to not only help mankind understand God's ways, what was called God's law, to oversee aspects of it, to enforce certain disciplines in other times, like in the days of David's transgression, when he went to number the census of the army, and then he was given 3 choices. He chose the angel of the Lord, which was the plague that broke out. So there's aspects where angels are sent to help, they're sent to give messages, and sometimes they're sent to exact divine punishment, both on the nations like Sodom and Gomorrah and Assyria and Babylon, and also just on Israel itself. Because as Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 13 and 14 tells us, this is the whole duty of man, that we fear God and keep his commandments. It does not say this is the whole duty of Israel. It says this is the whole duty of man. We fear God and keep his commandments, for God will bring every deed into judgment, whether good or bad. So what I'm putting forward is a universal principle that even the angels have to abide by the same expectations as mankind. This is why there is a temple in heaven. It was the one pattern on the ground that Moses made was copied after the one in heaven, as Hebrews 8:5 tells us. So again, all assumes, as we go back to the Gnostic idea, the philosophy of the 3rd, 4th century infiltrating the church. This all assumes that the kingdom of heaven that's supposed to come down to the earth, that it's a real place.
I got a couple of questions.
I got a lot of questions.
I know I have a few. We're at the 33-minute mark though. And so for all of the viewers who are watching on YouTube, on X, on Rumble, we are now going exclusively to patreon.com/Nephilim Death Squad. If you want to continue watching this episode, engaging in the live chat, that's where you do it. Otherwise, give it about a week and a half, and this episode will drop in its entirety on YouTube, on Rumble, and elsewhere. I want to start with something small.
Well, I got one. It's a crazy question.
Okay, go ahead.
You want it for rock, paper, scissors?
Okay, let's do that. Ready?
One
out of one.
Rock, paper, scissors says shoot. Whatever. Just go.
Okay,
go.
fine. It's me.
I'm sorry.
Do you think that even though the other angels are in Tartarus, that they can still influence us?
Humanity.
No. According to Enoch and even according to, who was it in history, the historian, I want to say Josephus, I could be wrong, but according to the ancients, like Tartarus was as deep below Sheol in the heart of the earth in comparison to how Sheol is to the surface of the earth. So if we're on level 1 in a building, Sheol was the basement and Tartarus is basement 2. And they're locked away in chains
under the jail,
not getting out till the day of judgment. This is why in the book of Enoch, Michael is trembling, talking about the judgment that's given to these guys. He's talking to other good angels about this judgment, and he's like, who can endure this? And he's trembling with fear because he's like, this is this is horrific. Like, who could it? They're going to be locked away for the whole storyline of all of history.
So let me ask you this: there are individuals who have come across our radar, and we've heard their testimony. We've spoken to these people directly. They claim that they are experiencing visitations from things that will have all sorts of agendas, but will identify themselves by the names of some of these angels or something like that. It sounds like what they're experiencing is more than likely the disembodied spirits of their offspring, the Nephilim, and that they are deceiving them. Does that seem like that's the case?
Yeah, if we take Enoch seriously, the Nephilim were unclean spirits created from this unholy union of the angels taking wives and having children through them. Those children were not called men. They were not called dirt of the earth. They were called unclean spirits. Mankind is never called a spirit until you get to the resurrection and you're glorified. So we're called dirt of the earth. We're made of Adam. We're descendants of Adam. So this is a big difference in ontology. And so this is why they gave birth to unclean spirits. So that's why when they lost their bodies, those unclean spirits are still here, chilling, hanging out. And this is where I would suggest that the Book of Jubilees, chapter 10, helps us out greatly. There's a conversation going on between Noah after the flood and the Almighty, saying, hey, you know how your watchers acted in my day and created these unclean spirits, and now they're still here after the flood, and they're causing my sons and grandsons to sin, and they're bringing about all horrific things. And then it says that 90% of them were given to be locked away into the earth, and 10% of them were left out under the control of Satan. Or Jubilees refers to him both as Satan and Mastema, which is like another pseudonym for Satan. So it's like, and that's why going forward after the flood, all you ever hear about and see are unclean spirits called demon gods, the idols of the nations, or Satan. You don't hear about any of these other. But if they're the children of these other rebellious angels, Samyaza and his boys, as listed out in Enoch, both chapter 6 and chapter 69, you get a whole bunch of list of all the names of them. Then that means they would know their names, right? Mm-hmm. Because they were their fathers at one point. So like they're still the same sentient entity from before the flood. So they're just compiling knowledge throughout the centuries, figuring out better ways to deceive us.
I think this is a great question from Z-Man here. Why not lock them all up? Why not? Why give them 10% of them?
I don't think that's for us to know.
Well, it's an interesting question.
Why didn't the father just absolutely zap all of them the moment they started taking wives?
Yeah.
Why let all that unfold? In fact, if you look closely at the judgments given in chapters 9 and 10 in First Enoch, the rebellious angels are told you're going to be locked away in Tartarus after you watch your sons each other in this type of civil war, which took another 500 years. So the judgment is pronounced, but it's not enacted until much later at an appointed time. So that means throughout the majority lifespan before the flood of all those patriarchs, you have these ridiculous, unclean spiritual beings running around of giant chimeric sizes and shapes, plus rebellious angels. Like I can't even imagine. We're trying to imagine, because I'm actually creating an animated series based on that.
Very cool, very cool.
Yeah. Are you familiar with?
You guys seen that yet?
No, I haven't. I'm going to check that out right after this. But are you familiar with the comic book? What's the name of the comic book? It's like Kingdom.
I know. They're out here, aren't they?
They're actually like right next to me, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, I forget what the heck the name of it though. It's very cool.
Yeah, they've hired a bunch of like former Marvel guys, DC guys, and they're doing comic books and also animated series. And then you have Angel Studios, who's kind of doing something strange with.
I don't know what they're doing. There's a lot of like weird conspiracies about Angel Studios, but they're doing a Nephilim series.
Do you have anything like something we could play? You can send us a link really quickly.
Please, I can put it in the studio real quick. It's just like a 1-minute teaser because we're working on episode 1 and 2 right now. It's called Days of Noah. It's going to be going through the lifespan 400 years before the flood and then 300 years after the flood up to the Tower of Babel.
That's awesome.
So that's Lord willing, if we get the whole thing funded, it'll be 8 full seasons. And it'll be called the Days of Noah.
How many episodes per season?
Well, we're hoping to do 15, but it just depends on the budget. So
that is a big undertaking. I'm hoping it works.
You know
out.
what?
That's cool.
It should be. There we go. Okay, let's play this out. Okay. Whoa. What?
That looks cool.
That is
That
okay.
looks really cool.
That's crazy. Like, I'm looking at David as that's playing, and he's in.
Well, that's like, you know, I love when people are doing stuff like this because.
Well, do you have like a Kickstarter or anything for that? Because I'd like to plug that every chance I get. That should. We have so much media out there, and it's like all kind of glorifying garbage. But
That's
if
what
we're
I'm
gonna
saying,
tell
yeah.
a good story, like,
Yeah,
dude.
if you go back to my Kingdom of Context homepage on YouTube, we have already a channel for Days of Noah. People are just waiting for us to drop the first 2 episodes. If you scroll down to subscribe to these also,
There we go.
and
Okay,
you can see
very
the Days of
cool.
Noah, and then click on that. And then we've got a few videos already out teasing the score, some of the behind the scenes process, as well as some of the
Oh,
teasers.
that's cool.
Oh man, I love this. Oh, that's awesome.
That's
You
what I'm
added
saying.
a whole nother layer of cool to this.
I'm like, you know, I have a 10-year-old son, and it's like you have to vet what he's watching. And every time you think it's like, okay, fine, this seems innocuous enough, you try watching it, and they're like implanting, like all of a sudden they're doing like necromancy. And I'm like, is that like a cartoon version of the Necronomicon? And they're doing like they're summoning spirits and all this. I'm like, what's going on here, man? Like
I did see a lot of cube.
Yeah, what was going on with all
symbolism
that
there.
cube?
Yeah,
That was fascinating.
Yeah, that's the Cult of Saturn. It's the cube symbols.
Right. We actually just talked to somebody who owns property.
No, they don't own it. It's public property.
Oh, it's public property.
Yeah.
Adjacent to like Skinwalker Ranch, and
No, wait. What are you talking about?
yeah,
No, not that.
I was talking about
The meadow, right?
Oh no, oh that was the meadow. I'm thinking I'm mincing something in my mind. Either way, somebody caught on thermal imaging this gigantic, like 20 by 30 foot, or roughly about that size cube that was only picked up on thermal. And then they had a couple people walking towards it, and they're like, yeah, just keep walking forward. It's a couple feet forward. It's a couple feet forward. All of a sudden, their imagery on the thermal disappears once they enter where the cube was. And so it's, you know, it's this really weird.
2 of them have since died.
Right. One of them was very, he was up there. I keep caveating that because the man was like 80 years old. And then the other guy, you know, he developed. And so, you know, high strangeness, hard to explain what was going on there. But yeah, the cube is like constantly coming up when you're looking into things like this.
Yeah, did you hear like two years ago, there was a guest on Joe Rogan, former military, talks about, he was a fighter pilot, and he talked about seeing a cube. It was basically a cube inside of a sphere, and the points of the cube were touching inside the sphere, and it was flying alongside one of the planes, and they were freaked out, and they didn't know what it was. So we address all that in both of those series, which is why I think they're so popular. We deep dive into all the occultic symbolism and the history of it and where it comes from. And in fact, if you guys want to have just a few slides prepared to introduce some ideas for you.
That's very cool. Let's slide it up.
But before we move on, one more question. All right, this is a crazy one, but you said the transgression of these watchers, like Shemyaza, and I guess most of the ones that came with him, was breeding with women, taking wives. But modern day Satanists, or like you know, occult, you'll hear occult stories where they're like, I am the bride of Satan. There's a lot of weird
that comes up a lot. The bride of Satan thing comes up a lot, and they'll be preparing like an innocent woman or an innocent girl to be received as the bride of Satan.
Or in SRA, they'll be like they'll be doing like weird ceremonies in order to, like, I don't know, impregnate the woman and then kind of like implant this. You know how this
same
goes.
old thing. Yeah.
Isn't that the same transgression? Like,
I don't think so. I think that the ritual magic they're trying to accomplish is through the ceremony. What I'm reading in First Enoch, Genesis 6, and Jubilees 5, actual angels showed up and physically took a woman and had sex with them. It wasn't some unseen, mystical, we have to have faith that this is happening type of ritual where a demon's going to infest somebody, and then suddenly the lady's pregnant.
Something more physical about this.
It was they. I mean, they're on the earth interacting until they're chained up and sent down into the earth. Like all that's very physical language. You know what I mean? So I definitely think they're trying to replicate some of these rituals. In these rituals, they're replicating these ideas in other ways that require faith. I'm sure you guys already know this, but like all magic adherents, witches and warlocks and those they'll tell you that it requires their own type of faith. Because like when they try to cast a spell or an enchantment on somebody, like they have to believe it's going to work. This is why they pray and they do certain patterns and rituals and set up certain, circumstances within the ritual, because it's not obvious that it actually works every time.
Right. They're doing like this legalistic approach to like skirt the lines of what they're allowed to do. And this is why, I guess this is why the success rates of like breeding Nephilim are probably quite low these days. And it seems like, you've got to do Neuralink chips and clone people. And
maybe if you can get like some sort of a program to chimerically create
something
one,
to interface into your brain.
Where faith is lost, technology might be able to pick up the slack.
Right. Yeah. It explains a lot of modern day.
My theory that I try to talk about is that there's two types of Nephilim. And this is why in the Hebrew text, it's spelt differently pre and post flood. The word Nephilim is slightly spelt differently after the flood. In the Hebrew, the pre-flood Nephilim are the literal sons of rebellious angels, and I'm going to cover that in some of my slides real quick. And then post-flood, you'd actually have the unclean spirits that have lost their bodies in the flood that are still out. They're considered the idols of the nations, right? The influencing spirits that cause people towards idolatry and wickedness. But then you have physical Nephilim that they're seeing that are as tall as cedar trees and, Numbers 13:33 and other places. And I think those are just genetic modification. And in the same story in Numbers 13, they also have the big pomegranates that they're carrying on a stick, and the big fruits. And they're like, oh, this is the land that, look, they're bringing it back to show we've never seen fruit this big. Look how big this stuff is, right? That is something that you can do today with genetic modification.
Right.
And so I'll go over that real quick. It's actually part of my slides, the actual science of it, if you will. And so this is, there's a few things in here, and you guys, if I go too fast, just stop me. Because I'm not sure. I know we only have so much time. So.
Oh, okay. All right. Here we go.
All right. So, you're on the screen.
Okay. Yeah. So this is, this all is all going to make sense. It's all going to go together. Okay. I'm giving you a very short introduction to our Investigating Babylon series. And we start off with two concepts in the series is that after the Tower of Babel and the nations became nations, people started speaking different languages. They walked away from the failed construction of the Tower of Babel. They walked away still worshiping the same God because they were already worshiping Zeus, whom ancient historians, even like Josephus, they called him Jupiter by the Roman name Jupiter, but it's the ancient Greeks called him Zeus. They were already worshiping Zeus, which is why they started the project of the Tower of Babel. So they'd already rebelled against the instruction of Noah, right? This is several generations after the flood. They're already going back to their tomfoolery, right? And they're getting into more shenanigans and starting to do idolatry again and worshiping Satan, right? Because he's deceiving them again, right? And the unclean spirits are seducing them with the wiles of idolatry, much of which is included with drugs and. So they're already being seduced to worship Zeus again or Satan, and they build the tower that gets destroyed, and then they disperse, speaking different languages, still all worshiping the same false god.
Sean, can I ask you a quick question? Anytime you come across in it, like antiquity, if there is a god that is described as a storm god, would you start from a place of suspecting that this was the same thing that was Zeus? In other words, a different name, but the same character?
Yeah, in most cases, there's strong synchronicity there. Yeah.
Okay.
And this is something in his secular history. They kicked against this idea for a long time of worship to the same gods by different names, but only in modernity have they decided. They kind of like modern scholars have kind of been like, guys, why? Like we found so much evidence that that there's interconnectivity between the nations from India to Greece, and they're all worshiping the same god. They all have similar trade relations. They all have similar homage. They just call them by different names because they speak a different language.
It
You know what
seems
I'm
like
saying?
the Sumerians, they worshipped one called Baal Hadad, which would have been
Yeah.
also the the god of storms.
Ancient astronaut theorist.
Ancient astronaut
Yes.
theorist. Yeah. So it seems like that was one of the early representations of Zeus as well, this Baal Hadad character.
That's right. That's right. This is why the Greeks actually ruled Egypt for 1,000 years at one point in history, and a lot of people forget that. And so they adopted a lot of their Greek names with the Egyptian god names because they knew it literally was the same gods. So like the word Osiris, very popular god in Egypt, that's actually a Greek transliteration of Ashur, which is the Egyptian name. Osiris is a Greek name. So a lot of people don't realize little stuff like that because church doesn't teach you history.
Yeah.
So basically, I put forward there's some big concepts here. After the Tower of Babel, all the nations are still experiencing a higher level of technology because this is the MO for Satan and the unclean spirits before the flood, that they're picking back up after the flood to continue to see the nations. And one of those is on screen here, which is this flying machine. You see these replete throughout Greece, Babylon, Egypt, and India. You see 3 people sitting inside of a craft floating above the ground with someone looking in the air, someone dressed in their mitre suit, looking in the air towards that, right? And what I also want to point out is something else that's interesting. I call this the most powerful weapon in Babylon. This little thing in his hand here is called a Vajra. Have you guys ever heard of the Vajra?
Oh, is that it's hard for me to make it out on this image, but is this the same thing that you'll see like Zeus depicted as holding in his hands? It's like
Yes.
this little that's
Yes.
It's funny because it's been translated to like a thunderbolt sort of
Yes.
iconically, but this is something that's been tracked
It's
throughout
crazy.
the
Yeah, it's all the same thing,
It's the
right?
same thing. Yeah, I'm like, what is that thing that you're clutching, dude?
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And the reason for it, though, is because well, that's weird. I don't know why the text is so dark. It wasn't supposed to be dark. But anyway, this text says, in the laws of the Babylonians, this is from an ancient text talking about the laws of the Babylonians. The Hakata unambiguously states that the privilege of operating a flying machine is great. The knowledge of flight is among the most ancient of our inheritances, a gift from those from up on high. We received it from them as a means of saving many lives. So this is from a text from like 2,500 years old text from ancient Babylon. We go over to ancient India, you see Vimanas. They're called Vimanas. You see those ancient flying machines in ancient India depicted everywhere. They actually had detailed schematics of them.
Whoa! I've never seen this in my life. That is fascinating.
Yeah, and this is, the Vedic Sanskrit language all written around. But these are called Shakuna Vimanas. These are the smaller ones. The Pushpakas are the bigger ones that hosted like 3,000 people.
Wow.
So this is the different, like in ancient Sanskrit, the Vimana is a word that means measuring out or traversing. And this is what was translated by the Oxford English University in the 1800s, or generically, colloquially referred to as a chariot of the gods. But
That's
it
what
just
Ezekiel saw.
possibly.
I think that's what Von Daniken named.
That's
his
what
book.
Chariot of the gods. Yeah.
I gotta say that it's remarkable that we could even go through this sort of alien rebranding that we're getting right now, where they could say like, oh, these guys are just benign, space homies from a galaxy far, far away, and they're here to help us ascend, and they're worried we're going to destroy each other in nuclear. It's like, no, these are ancient entities that I know that the Vedics worship them. But we used to have a much better handling on their nature, and it's just like Christianity has the obvious truth about their nature, and it's not taught. And right now, it should be taught because we're in the middle of the government trying to give us some disclosure, and they're going to sell us a whole narrative about what they are. And if you look around, historically speaking, the Greeks worship them, the Vedics worship them, like over and over and over again, and Christianity is the only one that's like, they're fallen angels, dog. Like that's not, these are fallen angels. These are
Or the children of.
Right. But it has their nature pinned down. And it's incredible that you could have things that ancient as far as text and diagrams. I'd never even seen that image before. And we're going like, oh no, they're just showing up now. It's like, no, dude, they've been here for a long time.
Yeah,
Why?
I'm even going to go over some stuff. it fell out of the studio. I'll put it back in. I'm even
Okay.
going to go over some stuff that describes what we see from these UAPs
Okay.
in these
let's
ancient
go.
texts. Okay, so this the Ramam Behest was the magnificent chariot that rose up to a mountain of cloud with a tremendous din. So from the interior column in that yellow there is where the tremendous din, which means a tremendous column of fire. I mean, it's kind of like a modern day rocket, right? The Bhima flew with his Vimana on an enormous ray, which was as brilliant as the sun and made noise like thunder of a storm. Sounds a lot like a rocket ship. You know what I'm saying? It goes on in the it's hard to say some of these Indian words here, but the Samarangana Sutra de Bahara, it
That
is
sounded
written.
pretty good.
That was great, dude.
It says, the strong and durable must the body of the Vimana be made, like a great flying bird of light material. Inside, one must put the mercury engine with its iron heating apparatus underneath. By means, the power latent in the mercury, which sets the driving whirlwind in motion, a man sitting inside may travel a great distance in the sky. The movements of the Vimana are such as it can vertically ascend, vertically descend, move slanting forward and backwards. With the help of the machines, human beings can fly in the air and heavenly beings can come down to earth.
That's incredibly descriptive. I mean, I would have to imagine that at some point, some governing body somewhere was like, we should try to create this. And then when they figured out it worked, they just shut up about that.
It's the same shape as like the Bell UFO that the Nazis were working on.
Well, it's
That's
interesting
right.
because that's
right.
the one angle, and then of course. So they were doing it themselves. It's oh my goodness. All right.
Yeah, in my actual Investigating Babylon series, I go into the 1950s United States Air Force projects where they're trying to replicate this stuff.
Wow.
And so this is why in modernity, when we see these unidentified aerial phenomenons, these UFOs, and they're moving, and they're moving just like it's being described here. I don't know if they're still being powered by mercury, but I do know that mercury can be used for fuel. And in the series I go over in the Smithsonian is an actual engine that NASA created in like 1974 that runs off mercury.
Wow.
And so
I wonder if that's like a perishable sort of a situation, is if you have mercury and you're using it, like they're heating it. It says with a what is it? Something of iron, a furnace of
Well,
iron.
they're not using the mercury anymore because they're putting it into
Yeah, that's
brains.
right. They're putting it in our brains.
that's
yeah.
right.
Well,
the
because
dentists are too busy putting it in your teeth.
yeah. What I'm wondering is if mercury at any point was our attempt to grasp a difficult to understand translation of a potential element. Like, in other words, with the Bob Lazar thing, he's describing like an additional element to the periodic table that we theoretically or didn't think existed, and he said it did, and then all of a sudden we created an unstable version of it. Maybe around like 2015, we created one, and it.
Sorry to sound like Smallville here, but no, this is actually something called red mercury, and this is historically found in India, and there's actually large old mines that have been depleted of the red mercury that historians have documented, and so this was something that when you melt it, we're not talking about the mercury that you actually put in your fillings with dentists and stuff, but when you melt it, it used to be called quicksilver, but it's actually red. And when they melted it, it supposedly has a combustible property. But supposedly there's not any red mercury mines still available today that produce anything.
So the combustible element suggests that it's perishable. You're going to run out of it if you keep blowing it up.
Yeah, but I think that this is just one of the means of powering these things, right? I think there's a lot more. So the Pushpaka Vimana is a gigantic plane the size of a large city, entirely capable of holding unlimited numbers of people. This is not my quote. This is from Professor D.K. Kanjilal. He's of the Indian Aeronautical Society professor. So, and this is from this ancient text, the Matsya Purana.
Quick question, Sean. This is completely unrelated, but we're talking about Indian mystics that are kind of like know a lot about this. Do you know anybody named Dr. D.G. Vinod?
No.
Okay, never mind.
I haven't heard that name. And then it's just more schematics that in the 1920s, they had an engineer look at these ancient Vedic texts and start drawing schematics from what was described. And these are the different shapes of the Vimanas that were described.
That gigantic previous one, that floating city, I can't help but think of like New Jerusalem, like this idea that it's supposed to appear like a massive floating city. Isn't that how it's described?
I mean, it's going to come down.
Coming down out of the sky.
And then here we have this Pushna, which is a gigantic, is that what it says?
Pushpaka.
Pushpaka, I'm sorry, I couldn't see it.
Pushpaka, yeah.
Large city entirely capable of holding unlimited people. And it is hovering. That's fascinating.
Yeah, that's right. So that's why in that Days of Noah teaser you saw at the very end, you saw those big ships flying in the sky.
Yeah.
They're ancient Vimanas that we're depicting.
Man, the level of steel manning, that idea of ancient lost technology, and that what we scoff at as our ancient ancestors were actually significantly more advanced in every way, not just because you know it's okay to go, well, it seems like they were more spiritually advanced. Well, it seems like they also were probably more technologically advanced than we were, or we currently are.
I know there's some incredibly intelligent people on the earth today, but as a whole, I think mankind has lost some information intentionally.
I think I'm testimony of that.
This is like probably a whole other show, but I would put forward that because of what Christ, his incarnation on the earth and his what he did changed the game forever. Because now that he's ascended to heaven, as Peter tries to explain in Acts chapter 2, 31 through 33, the results of the Holy Spirit giftings on the earth amongst mankind is because we have this wonderful, perfect high priest in heaven's temple now, who's Christ Jesus at the right hand of the Father. And because of that process, because Christ has been exalted to that place, we have better access to God's power to minister and to call people to repentance and to destroy the works of the devil on the earth more than they ever had before that. And that's why you start to see nations change, and the occult becomes the occult at that point. The outward temples to Baal and Molech and Astaroth, they start going underground in the centuries following the appearance of Christ.
Could this be? I'm gonna remove this down for 1 second, because I just want to.
Sure.
This is gonna a little detour. Could this be why you were talking about the priesthood of Christ? I watched about half of that debate, but you were saying that he's actually there doing sacrifices, currently doing things in his position of high priesthood, and that allows us to have dominion over these principalities here through the Holy Spirit. So through his works, what he's doing right now in heaven, that allows the Holy Spirit to operate here. But when he comes back, he's no longer going to be in that position of high priesthood. He'll come back, do his thing, and then there will be the 7 years of tribulation.
The way I see it is that the kingdom of heaven is the New Jerusalem, and that's the house he's going to receive us into, where he's prepared many rooms for us. And inside that kingdom, which is Revelation 21 describes as approximately 1,444, miles in the English measurement, American measurement, width, length, and height, right? So that's massive. That's like a continent, guys. It's massive, right? It's like, that's why it's promised. It is the promised land, Hebrews 11, that Abraham looked for, that's going to sit between the Euphrates and the Nile, because that's the approximate territory that it would encompass when it sits down. That's where the seventh trumpet, this goes into a whole eschatological conversation. So I'm trying to give you like a super short breakdown to answer your question efficiently. Jesus Christ in Hebrews 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, he's called a high priest forever. He's going to be our high priest forever. Okay. He's at the right hand of the Father forever. That's an honored position that was prophesied of him in Psalm 110, 1 through 4. So he came, lived, died, resurrected. He was faithful. He was given that position after he ascended to heaven, because that's why Hebrews 8, 4 tells you the priesthood on earth is already given to somebody. That's the Levites. So he's now glorified man, and he embodies the Melchizedek priesthood in heaven's temple forever. So when heaven house comes down to the earth, Christ lives inside there with us and is high priest forever from that location, which in ancient Israel, the priesthood was also rulership. They ruled over the people as well, right? That's why Aaron was given a crown on his turban, because he was like...
I was asking about when the Holy Spirit is removed from the people during this tribulation.
I'm not sure I fall into that interpretation.
Okay.
I've heard that growing up too, as far as a pre-trib rapture idea. The Holy Spirit's removed, and then everyone else on earth is just going to be like a chicken with their head cut off, lawlessness. But I'm not sure that's the case, because I'd love to do the show if you guys want to talk about end times and eschatology. I can give you my view on that with a bunch of scriptures, but it seems to be that the two witnesses are here in the 42 months leading up to the return of Christ. And so they're calling people to repentance, and the unrepentant are trying to kill them. So it seems to be that their message is having some sort of positive effect and people are repenting. So
Right.
anyway, but that's where Christ is still always going to be high priest no matter what happens. And so when the kingdom of heaven comes down to earth, the Melchizedek priesthood that he embodies is a different order than of the lineage of Aaron and Zadok, the Levites on the earth. Those are immortal mankind. That's why we're promised in Revelation 24-6 that those who take part in the first resurrection, we rule and reign with Christ for 1,000 years. So you have to have someone to rule and reign over, right?
Right.
So kingdom comes down, the millennial reign begins. We're ruling and reign over the nations inside of a higher level of order of priesthood because we're glorified, resurrected than the Levites of mortal mankind. So there's a whole dichotomy here as far as this is why even after Jesus ascended to heaven, there was 40 more years of Levites ministering in the temple on earth, while Jesus is a Melchizedek ministering in heaven's temple above. Remember, because AD 70, that's when the temple was destroyed.
Right.
Acts 21, 3 years before the temple is destroyed, the disciples are still telling Paul, go do a vow offering and present your offerings for these four men we have as well. And so that's when Paul gets arrested. He's trying to go to the temple to give his offering just to prove that he doesn't teach against God's ways, God's law. So like that means the priesthood is on earth. Just because the veil was torn doesn't mean that operations stop. They put the veil back up, guys. You know what I'm saying? Like the veil was torn. It symbolized something. Yes, we understand that. But to the unbelieving Jews and the Levites that ministered in that temple, they didn't skip a beat. Like they repaired the temple. They put the veil back up. And we see them continuing to use that temple up until it was destroyed by the Romans to fulfill Christ's words in Matthew 24, right? So meanwhile, Christ has already ascended to heaven for 40 years. He's ministering in heaven's temple above. This is what the writer of Hebrews is explicitly telling us in Hebrews 2:17 and Hebrews 5:7-10 and chapter 8 verses 1-5. And so this is why, like, the question I always have for folks when it comes to the incredulity of like, how could this possibly be? The first step is understanding how we've been sold this lie that heaven's not a real place. And the second step would be Christ is a high priest. What does that mean? What's the biblical definition of a priest? What does he do? He ministers to God on behalf of the people. So this is why you asked earlier, Top, you asked about when did this all start happening in the church? Like it's the 3rd and 4th century, specifically with the influence of Augustine. Augustine was a convert who was a former Manichaean philosopher, which is, may as well just call him a Gnostic. And he brought in a whole bunch of reinterpretive ideas that took the literal nature out of the scriptures. He didn't believe Adam and Eve were real characters. He thought there was just an allegory for something. But you got, like, if I was in the 3rd century and I'm, got one of those robes and I'm sitting there in the council with Augustine and we're talking about scripture, I would have immediately raised my hand and said, okay, well, you got a huge problem, Augustine. If Adam and Eve are just an allegory, why are we keeping a genealogical record in Genesis 5 and Genesis 11 and 1 Chronicles and Matthew 3 and Luke 3, Matthew 1 and Luke 3? Like, why do we have this Hebrew genealogical record dating back to Adam that he begat this guy and he begat this guy and he begat this guy if it's all allegory, right? So Augustine was hugely influential. I call him on the church. He was a gentleman. I know some people love him, but they've bought into what he was selling. I think that he interpreted with incredible liberality that was unjustified. And because he had such sway within his position, just in case a lot of people are not familiar with the history of the church, you didn't have to actually be a good biblical scholar back in the day in order to create new dogma. You just had to be a bishop with power.
That's it.
I mean, it's the same today. So
I don't want to start name calling, but that's a
okay. All right, we got you well off track of
let's get back to these flying
the Vimana.
Indian
if I can bring this back up. But yeah, dude, that's what we just spoke about there. Is like, I mean, it might be an entire another episode, or I'll just watch your stuff and we'll figure that out. But
this is remarkable because I would have things have gotten so crazy right now with AI that I would see this and I'd go, I have no idea if that's even real anymore.
Yeah, this is a long time. This is a picture from a long time ago, though. So, but yeah, and I sourced this picture back in 2020. But but yeah, this is just showing you the schematics that were created by the Indian Aeronautical Society from interpreting these Vedic texts about the Vimanas match some of the hieroglyphs they found in India, as well as it's just everywhere on all of their artwork and everything. It's everywhere in ancient India. This is common knowledge in India that the gods flew in these vessels.
This is why when I bring this up all the time, but when people say, "Oh, you're Christian, but so you believe your God's real and these other gods aren't," I'm like, no. I believe my God's real, but I also believe these other entities exist. They're lowercase g gods. I think that these people really genuinely did see and experience these things, I think this really only bolsters that.
Yeah. It's in all these ancient cultures. It's pretty fascinating. So here's one of the most interesting. The Shukana. This depiction is really interesting because it actually had wings.
Wow.
So you're and it had a propeller on the front, but the interior
it's like an airship,
saucer.
right?
Yeah. It's pretty wild. And these were vertical takeoff. It's not like they didn't need a landing strip to get up to 88 miles per hour, Doc. Like they just vertically take off. Like they could float, they could pause, they could move back and forth. They had an incredible sophistication. Now here's where it gets really fun, in my opinion, because you see the same type of depictions in other cultures. Mm-hmm. The actual vessel of Ra that he moved around in was called the boat of a million years, is what they called it in ancient Egypt, and it's the boat of Ra, in short. And he actually flew in a vessel in the sky, and sometimes he would have his bodyguards with him. And he was, by the way, this beetle, that's the Kefir beetle, which is another representation of Ra in ancient Egypt. And that's a whole nother thing we go into in the ancient Israel. Like it's actually in the Septuagint of the 8th plague of the Egyptians. It actually wasn't flies, it was the beetle, according to the Septuagint.
Why?
Which would have been
a beetle?
Because of that sun above his head and how the beetle's hands seem to be upholding the sun.
Yeah.
So the dung beetle in ancient Egypt would pop out of the ground and would go grab the crap from a donkey or an animal and grab little pieces of it and roll it along the ground, and then hold that little ball of crap above his head, and then take it back into another hole to make a nest out of it.
Okay.
So
I didn't mean to laugh at that. I'm such a child.
No, it's hilarious to me because like they literally personified their patron god as a dung beetle.
That's hilarious.
Now, that's why the depictions, when you see the beetle, he's always holding the sun above his head, because that's what they viewed Ra as, the sun god. But what's interesting about the actual beetles, there's many of the types of beetles, they have a reflective nature to their outer bodies, which is unlike any other insect that we know of, to where it can actually camouflage itself to its surroundings. I go into the implications of that in my Investigating Babylon series. It's very interesting because we're talking about the trickster, right? Satan. He shows up to, in Luke 4, Matthew 4, he shows up to Christ as a man. He shows up, like in the same way, like Hebrews 13:2, in the same way that you may be entertaining good angels unaware. Mm-hmm. How do you know if you've ever run into that bad angel that's still here?
Right.
You got to test it.
Right, because he could be disguised. He's not going to show up and be like, I'm a rebellious angel. You know what I'm saying? Like he's of course he's going to show up and he's considered the great trickster in all these ancient societies. To the Norse, he was considered Odin, who was someone that could appear as a normal man and fool people. And,
wait, dang. Oh, wait. So I'm sorry to spurge out on you like that. So we're talking about the same Satan that would have been Azazel, correct?
Yes.
Man, there we go. I did like a brief research one day. We had that guy on. Who was it? We were talking to Jonathan of Meta Mysteries, and he was saying that he had this dream where he was basically a watcher. He didn't have a dream. He was doing DMT, and we were like, geez, dude. And he's like, yeah. So I had this experience where I was essentially this like celestial entity looking down on the earth, and I was upset because they didn't realize that I could help them, these people that were down on the earth. And I'm listening to him going, okay. And he's like, so I went over to like my manager, the guy who was like overseeing us, and I asked him to incarnate me, like, so that I could inhabit a, what would you call it? An avatar or whatever on earth. That way I can help these people. And the person that he's talking to is Odin. That's the way he described it. And I'm like, Odin. And I forgot what research I did.
I think he had one eye.
That's probably it. Yeah. And I was like, afterwards, as he's talking, I look it up, and something that I stumbled upon showed me like there's a strong correlation with Odin being interchangeable with Azazel. And I was like, dog, it seems like that you just had like this experience. I don't know what to call it. I don't know what it is, but Odin sounds really cool if you're into like Norse mythology. You know what I mean? Like there's this kind of like thing where that is probably the Marvel films have done quite a bit of that, and some of the games, God of War and such.
If you look at the first Thor movie that came out in like 2011 or whatever, this boat that I'm showing you right here on screen is the design of Thor's temple palace throne area.
Yeah, that's funny. I just rewatched that film recently. That's true.
Yeah, it's like the exact. Also, you see the eagle on top of the little house in the boat that's supposed to be holding Ra. The eagle has always been representative of Ra. Also, it's just one of the many.
I am killing it.
This is
dude.
like Nazi Germany stuff.
Yeah, that's also
it's
the
like
number
the
one
American
animal
dollar
associated
bill.
with Zeus.
On the back of the $1 bill, there's the pyramid, the LCNI, and then the other side is the eagle.
Yeah. That's why people will go off and there's like this big renaissance about how cool Hitler was. And then people will try to make this argument that like Hitler was Christian or Catholic. And I'm like, all the iconography surrounding Hitler.
Looks like that.
Yeah. He's got the eagle, which is associated with Zeus. He's got the altar of Pergamum that he's designing his like Tribune Fairgrounds after. I know people are like, he commissioned an artist to do that. And I'm like, okay, yeah. So he just didn't know that the fairgrounds he's giving all his speeches from are designed after the temple of Zeus that they found in Pergamum. And he's like everything. And then, of course, the lightning bolts on the SS uniforms, like everything about him is covered in Zeus iconography, which is the same old dude.
Stuff. Look at it. There you go.
Dang.
So this is just a quick comparison. And on the right-hand side, one of the Vimanas of ancient India that the gods flew in. Also, they represented it being enshrouded with the lotus flower, which the lotus flower in ancient India represented the power of Brahma. Brahma is the equivalent of Ra in ancient India, Brahma being the head patron god. And his power was derived from the lotus. That's why he's always depicted as a serpent god floating on a lotus pad. So that's a whole nother study. We go over that in our 42 series, and how the lotus is being re-represented in modern day quantum physics. And that's a bigger conversation. But this is interesting, just parallels you're seeing. Ancient India also had Lord Indra, and Lord Indra on the elephant on the top right is holding one of the Vimanas. And here's Vimanas dug up through history.
What do you think those are? These, I mean, given their correlation with lightning. Okay, go ahead, please.
Yeah, it tells us in the ancient Vedic texts that Lord Indra, this powerful device that Lord Indra had, could not only destroy the enemy in the form of an attacking flying machine, but it also had the ability to cause rain and was a symbol of fertility. The Vajra itself is a thunder of 1,000 blades forged from iron or gold mixed with bronze or stone. So it's an actual remote control device that can control other flying machines, plus it can produce lightning.
So when you get that idea of Zeus throwing lightning bolts, it wasn't that far off.
It's not that far off. That's why Lord Indra, Vishnu, Brahma, they're all sitting with serpents everywhere, and this I can't even think of the word right now, but this staff is just another form of an elongated
trident.
The trident, yeah, that's the Greek trident. So they all had the same Greek trident, and we see a variant form of this with the Egyptian staff of Ra, which also was said to have been able to exude lightning. And here is some more classical Greek depictions of Zeus with the lightning bolt in his hand. And even it's on some coins throughout history, as well as him with the trident throughout history.
And he's got his eagle.
Yeah.
There you go.
And then here's a massive one they found in Nepal. I want you to look closely at the people standing left and right of it compared to its size.
This is meant to be a handheld object.
Right.
That's a big hand, man.
Right.
Wow.
It's interesting, right? So you got some interesting depictions of Vimanas over time. The one on the top right is all gold they found in Japan. So the point is that it was stretching throughout the nations. This was a common understood idea of a weapon of the gods. Now, am I saying that this picture.
Oh, Elon has one of these, by the way, on his
Yes.
nightstand.
I saw the picture. You're right. Yeah.
The hell, man.
He has next to his
Also-
revolver.
Shout out to Yanette in the chat. She reminded me.
Not to like completely disrupt the conversation, but we just had on Topher Gardner yesterday of Biocharisma, and he's building like these domes using
Mandala kind of
mandala patterns that do resemble the lotus mandala pattern, and it's very interesting how
it's like
he
a sacred geometry thing, right?
Yeah,
there
it's
is
very weird.
There's
It's just-
something there.
but it continues to present itself in these esoteric subjects that we look
does.
into.
Hey, guys, if you're interested in what I say today, I highly encourage that you watch all of the Investigating Babylon series before you watch the 42 series, because the 42 series is a more advanced, in-depth, deep dive. The Babylon series is like a surface level overview of history and concluding to like how Christ is relevant in all this. Now he destroys the works of the enemy and all this. So like I started episode 1. Hopefully you'll have your mind blown by episode 21, and you'll want to watch the 42 series after that. But this goes into the concept of pre and post flood giants as well, because these were in all the ancient depictions in ancient Egypt, Greece, and India. They considered the lower G gods their rulers. Did you guys know that in ancient Indian writings, the concept of reincarnation was only applicable to the little G gods for thousands and thousands of years, and then later, in an empire way later down the line, one of the kings got the idea that they would offer reincarnation to the average person if they would be a good citizen.
That's fascinating.
As a political
Oh
tool.
my God!
It
Wait
makes
a
a
second.
lot of sense.
Okay, all right. So remember when there was a guy's story that I was reading. Long story short, he's possessed by an entity. He communes with this thing regularly. Eventually, he casts it out, but this thing makes him, privy to some hidden knowledge. And through his regular interactions with this thing, and this is all, you got to take it with a grain of salt, right? This is some dude's testimony that was possessed. He says that this entity told him that reincarnation is real, but it is not a perfect system because God did not create it. The angels created it. And something has gone wrong in that process over the years. And now it's, for lack of a better term, all messed up. And so you pair that with the idea that these lowercase g gods, or even their offspring, the Nephilim,
it makes sense, because where do they go?
right? And so they're trying to incarnate into human avatars over and over again, and then they die. They try to further their whatever they're doing. They rule and Then they die and they reincarnate again. And then once you start offering that to people, yeah, I'm sure it gets real squirrely if they did in fact do that. That's fascinating.
Yeah, I would suggest that the unclean spirits and Satan doesn't have authority over your soul like that. And like when you die, your soul goes into the custody of God to await judgment, as Hebrews 9:27 and 28 tell us. Right? It's appointed man once to die and then judgment. So the concept of unclean spirits being able to re-inhabit new life forms to try to keep their message alive over the centuries, 100% the origins of the idea of reincarnation.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, and so that's where I would say this is what we're looking at here is the unclean spirits that keep trying to pop into the affairs of men and control things. They're just pre-flood giants, and that we get this story from Genesis 6. You guys are already well aware of this. You know that there's tons of archaeology that supports this type of stuff. Jubilees 5 also has a parallel accounts. If anyone is unfamiliar with the Book of Jubilees, it's not even question. I know that there's a lot of modern Christian preachers that will say, "Oh, Jubilees is not inspired." I don't know that. They've never read it. I promise you, they've never read it, and they don't know the history of the rabbis in the first century. They did not question Jubilees as a authoritative book. They just removed it from their canon because they didn't want people to read it. So there's a difference between thinking something's uninspired. They didn't call it that language back then. They called it sacred writings. But there's a difference in saying that, well, these are sacred writing books like First Enoch and Jubilees and the Testament of the 12 Patriarchs, which all have interlocking synonymous storylines. And those three books in particular, Rabbi Akiva in the first century, towards the end of the first century AD, decided he's considered the great reformer of ancient Pharisaic Judaism. And he's the one that decided those three books, we're not letting people read those anymore. He didn't say that they were uninspired. He just said, we're not making them for public reading anymore. This is
Was there
why
an explanation given?
He believed that people were not wise enough to read them, and that people would fall into heresy, and that basically they would cause them to lose their salvation. And so then he started making this very Pharisaic imposition to say no one can read these except for the wise, right? But here, 100 years later, you have Tertullian writing about First Enoch, going, "This is clearly scripture. I don't know why the Jews don't accept this." And he theorizes it's because their disagreement with the reality that angels could have taken wives in the days of Noah.
Oh wow! So what we
So it's
started
like-
off talking about.
Exactly. It's like a direct correlation. The suppression of this storyline, which is why we're still dealing with all this deception today. It's like the enemy has been trying to remove the storyline from people's consciousness for a long time. They don't want you to
isn't
know
that
where
like
they came
the curse? Like it's crazy because that's the curse of the serpent in the garden, right? He's like, you'll crawl on your belly and you'll eat dirt. Well, what's dirt? Does he just mean like the dirt on the ground, or is he talking about humans? Like, what is that? Where does that fall? That's where my mind goes right
I don't
away.
know, but listening to that, this idea that it would cause people to fall into heresy, and in other words, it would be bad for their faith, is like
It's the same reason that we're given in modern day churches why
Right.
you shouldn't look at extra canonical texts. And
But for me,
things like
all
that.
it does is it galvanizes me even more. Like I'm like, look at this unbelievable plan that
Right.
God the Father hatched and that Jesus Christ executed, and now we have this pathway to redemption, and it all like squares it away. And it makes sense, and it doesn't do anything to put it. It brings me closer, I think.
Right.
I mean, well,
Now, remember,
Jeez.
Rabbi Akiva, the most influential Pharisaic rabbi of the first century, considered the great reformer of ancient Judaism. He rejected Christ.
oh well, there you go.
So, like, I don't trust his opinion.
yeah,
That
He can
explains
kick
a lot.
rocks, man. Like he can go, mess with his tefillin. Anyway, so I would just say like Enoch 7 is clearly scripture because it parallels Genesis. I mean, we have I've actually have on my channel a document history, the documented history of the manuscript history of Enoch. Whether all the ones found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, plus the Amharic and the Giaz from the Ethiopians, how they had it this whole time, and then just how it's been preserved in different languages throughout history,
Mhm.
and even in Greek writings up until the 8th century. The historian George Synkelos, the Greek historian, he's trying to make a chronography of the world, basically like the first history book in the 8th century AD, and he's pulling directly from Jubilees and Enoch to make his history book. In the 8th century.
I need to watch these videos because it's like I don't know. A lot of people say, "Oh, it popped up in 1947, very interesting," but it's popped up a bunch of times throughout history.
And the Ethiopians never removed it. Well, that's an interesting question then. So in the beginning of Enoch, it says that this is for the fig tree generation. But if the Ethiopians have had it the whole time, are we wrong? In some people, like I even get that feeling. I'm like, oh, we found it in 47, and now it's like it's become part of this ethos again, and it's become part of the conversation again.
A lot happened in 1947.
A lot happened in 1947. So when it comes to like the fig tree generation, is that us?
Yeah.
Or?
Well, I would just say that the opening 3 or 4 lines of First Enoch 1 is just telling you, like this message was written for a remote and distant generation going through great tribulation, because it gives you all the information you need to know to avoid the deception.
Yeah.
So like if I suddenly know where these rebellious angels come from, where these unclean spirits come from, I'm not going to fall for Apollyon when he pops up out of the pit in Revelation 9.
Right.
I'm not going to fall for the mark of the beast. I'm not going to fall for the wiles of Satan, who Revelation 12 goes out and deceives the world. Like I know who they are, and I know they're on the wrong side. I know they lose. I know they have nothing to offer. And I'm not going to fall for it because I know who they are, where they came from, right? I'm not going to believe they're, the modern narrative, which I believe that they're going to play upon, which is the panspermia. Modern astrophysicists and scientists, and the Lawrence Krauses, the Neil deGrasse Tysons, they're like, oh, what if life was just seeded in the past by someone who's just a distant relative who went on a trip and he's going to come back in the future. And so I talk about that in our 42 series. Like that's my theory, is how they're going to fool the nations with the alien disclosure. And it's going to be someone that looks like us, because he's just an advanced old version of us. He's seeded life on the earth, and he's come back to help us. He's going to help us get rid of and leukemia and Lou Gehrig's and autism and all that stuff. And he's going to help us, and he's going to be he's going to give us technology. And I personally think that that's going to be a part of the end times deception, is they're going to play upon the panspermia narrative they've been pushing for 40 years.
Rogan does that too.
Yeah,
he's
he
like,
does.
what if aliens are like, they're just like us, man? Like, you know, like if we just kept going and we had technology and we had no need for like sexual reproductive organs and like, you know, our brains got really big, but our bodies got like small and weak because we weren't doing jujitsu anymore.
It's tiring, isn't it? It's just like, yeah, all right, dude.
Yeah.
I like Rogan, but it's like, okay.
Yeah, I see what you're doing, Rogan. That's what do we say? The new Laurel Canyon.
Well, you know, I don't know. It's how much is intentional and how much is like,
I don't know.
Like what you've heard and then regurgitated, because
the pictures with Anton LaVey don't help. He's
okay.
Like, you know,
let's continue.
They don't help. All right. That's all I'm saying.
Let's continue.
So this is the famous passage here in Enoch 7 that talk about everybody's angels taking wives. But look what it says specifically in verse 1. All together with them took unto themselves wives, each chose for himself one. They began to go in unto them to defile themselves with them. And we know that this is actual, because in chapter 15, the Almighty says, you defiled yourselves with the blood of women. Right? And they taught them charms and enchantments and the cutting of roots and made them acquainted with plants. And the very next statement is they became pregnant and bare giants. Now, if that isn't the most disjointed concept I've ever heard, to be like, wait a minute, so you taught them how to garden, and then they became, and then you just skip to the pregnant part.
Well,
so wait a minute,
that's the way to a woman's heart is gardening.
No, this is psychedelics.
Yeah, oh, interesting.
So basically, it's like, wait a minute, you're telling me that you introduce this part of the story by them taking wives, you take a detour to talk about how you taught them gardening, and then you go back to, and they became pregnant with giants.
No.
What if this is the pharmakia, the enchantments, that's the definition of that word, enchantments, it's a spell. It is the keber in the Hebrew. It means a spell when it comes to this type of pharmakia. And it's derived from plants. The cutting of roots, that they made them acquainted with plants. So what is root cutting? A long time ago, I decided, maybe I should look up what is root cutting. Lo and behold, there's a wealth of information about what is root cutting. And there's 5 different growth hormones inside of the roots of plants and trees: auxins, cytokinins, gibberellins, ethylene, and abscisic acid.
Whoa,
and each
gibberellins.
of these, yeah, I'm going to get to that too. Each of these hormones affect how the plant grows, how long its roots grow, how big the stem gets before it buds, flowers, how the width and breadth of the flowering. So all of the dimensions of how it grows in 3 dimensions are affected by these 5 growth hormones. So therefore, if you want to change how big or how wide the flower grows, give it more growth hormones.
Dude, is this like old school CRISPR?
Yep.
Whoa, but this is crazy. You realize that what you're saying to us is crazy, right?
Yes.
I love this.
Yes.
What?
Oh, man.
I told you we make a lot of people upset.
So you
upset,
are
dude?
you,
You're crushing over there.
This is,
Kingdom in context, guys. Everybody, go.
I
quickly.
mean, before you go to the next slide, are you saying that they're giving them certain plants in order for them to conceive and grow something this
or
large?
specifically certain growth hormones, or maybe?
Yes. You guys ever heard of you ever been to Home Depot and saw Miracle Grow on the shelf?
Yeah.
All it is gibberellins inside of that bag.
The fuck out of here. I'm sorry. This is a Christian show.
I'm not going to bring the gun out on this show. All right. We're doing regular stuff.
Please
here.
continue.
But that's interesting when you say he became Gibberim.
Yep. That's it. That's it. Specifically, he became a Gibberim.
These people are not paying enough for this information.
Unbelievable.
I'm just saying.
I really hope if you're watching this, please go over to Kingdom in Context after this episode is over, because if he's cooking this hard on this show.
Yeah. Unfortunately, part 11 of the Investigating Babylon series, you can only watch on Rumble because YouTube took it down.
Okay.
So,
why? Did you say that
they
cytokines might have health benefits?
No, I went over the history of inoculations and vaccines.
Okay,
that'll do it.
Yeah,
and
that'll do it.
They claim medical information, even though I just gave the CDC statistics and information.
Yeah,
so
we got
I
our.
talk
We almost
about
lost
I
our
talk
channel
about
because
this stuff being inside some of the juice and
is
some
it
of the
really?
concepts. Oh man, there's a whole host of things in the juice that is not anything to do with medicine, and yeah, it's bad.
You would probably be interested in our. I mean, it's retarded, but we have a crazy deep dive on that stuff. how it relates to. I asked you about if you knew Dr. D.G. Vinod and his work with Indrija Puharich, and then stemming to the telepathy tapes. It's a crazy rabbit hole.
Yeah, but there's something
but
there's
I'm
something
sure
really there.
He'd do a much better job than
Oh,
we
I'm
did.
sure. Yeah, maybe if we told him, he'd be like, "That I'm gonna actually research that and then execute that much better than you guys are doing."
Yes, please do.
Oh man. All right. Well, let's continue.
In 2011, I saw a TED Talk with a girl. Now, my last name is Griffin. This lady's name is Griffith, no relation. But she was she was an epigeneticist scientist giving a TED Talk, and she was talking about how it's just a hormone game. Like they could create giants again. It's like flipping on a light switch off and on. If you have the right amount of growth hormones during gestation when you're pregnant, that you can flip off the growth hormone and you can cause someone to grow 3 times as big and their joints work perfectly. Everything's appropriate for their size. It's just a matter of introducing hormones at a specific time that creates much larger people. Apparently within all of us is pre-programmed from inception, is pre-programmed into our DNA that like I'm 5'10" and a half. So like, I was meant to grow to that point and stop. But had someone switched off of those growth hormone inhibitors in my DNA, I could have grown to be like 10 feet tall.
This is like catfish, right? Like a indeterminate growth depending on the surroundings, how much they can eat.
That's also the issue when you crossbreed like a liger or something like that, right?
Exactly.
These cross species things will have their growth hormone inhibitors or whatever growth inhibitors are switched off, and so they become absolutely massive.
So I got chickens out there. Well, they're dead now, but yeah, they
shout out to Jenna.
Shout out to Jenna, my dog who killed them. But yeah, certain breeds of, obviously we're kicking this to death, but certain breeds of chicken have been bred specifically to grow to tremendous weights and within 6 weeks of their life. And it's incredible. Right. It's actually sad to watch them. They grow to this size and they're just like so fat and they're like me.
Remember we talked about Numbers 13 where they brought back the vegetation to show how big things were?
Yeah.
You need big food for big people.
This is where nothing new under the sun, as in the days of Noah, all this GMO crap. Mm-hmm. It really is. Whenever we're kind of speculating schizophrenically, like maybe they were doing GMO stuff back in the day.
Oh, yeah, they were. That's why God told them to burn all that stuff and everything.
That's why atheists love to go into those early stories about the conquest of Canaan and start picking out certain places that they destroyed everything, men, women, children, animals, everything, and then other places they spared the women and children. And even the animals, just killed the fighting men. And you're like, what? Atheists love to mock God for what seems to be a lack of consistent approach, a lack of consistent military doctrine, right? But that's not it at all.
He's just looking for growth hormone.
Remember in First Samuel, I think it was I can't remember what chapter, 1 Samuel 21 maybe, where David goes in and I think it's the Midianites he has to fight, and then he lines them all up and measures them.
Yep.
And the ones that were 2 measures he kills, but the ones that were only 1 measure he spared.
Yeah. That's what he's doing.
He's not just coming up with some arbitrary way of killing people because he's sadistic. Like they were rooting out genetic corruption everywhere because this is the ways of Babylon, which is to destroy everything by GMOs, cloud seeding, like all the different ways to destroy the air we breathe, the food we eat, the land we live on, how we reproduce our children. They want us all birthing short bus kids. Like that is their goal. You know what I'm saying? They don't want us to actually survive.
Short bus kids with telepathy.
Yeah, well, so before we even started this show, I had obviously a distance. I had a distance from God. I had a falling out with the church, and I was doing other things. And I had asked God in my heart, I guess. I was like, listen, man, there's a lot of things pulling me back, but you've got to explain to me why, because that's that was a big holdup for me. Like, why you these people? Why does it say that? Because then you look at modern day Israel and kind of like what they're doing now. I'm like, you guys are doing some messed up stuff, and I'm just like, if I'm going to be down with this, I got to understand because it doesn't make sense to me. And then a couple of months, years later, I'm doing this show and learning all about this, and that part that's revealed to me like almost directly. It's like, well, no, this is descendants of the Nephilim. Like this makes a lot of sense. The rest of the Bible makes a lot of sense. I've got no holdups, and I'm moving forward, like understanding this stuff at breakneck speed when I've been reading it my whole life.
Well, that's that's what I was getting at before. It's like, I don't know if this would resonate with everybody, but certainly there's more people like us. If the church was talking about this, there would be at least some massive bump in percentage of people attending.
Maybe.
I don't know what that would look like, but I know that there's other people like me. They're in the audience. We talked to thousands of them. There would be a big bump in attendance.
So the one thing I do want to clarify for anyone listening is that I'm not making when I say that there's two types of Nephilim, there's the unclean spirits who lost their bodies and now they're still here after the flood as unclean spirits. That's one distinction. And then the other one is just genetically modified regular people.
Mm-hmm.
So the unclean spirits that are disembodied, who try to possess people, they're damned. There's no offer of salvation to them. Genetically modified people are still people.
Right.
God could still save them.
That's a question that we get into a lot. Also, it's a touchy subject where it's like, when you're talking about these bloodlines, it's like, how much is the bloodline? What's the delineating point for God to be like, nah? But yeah, 1%, whatever it is.
But think about it though, like even the unfortunate situation in some of those, warring clans with Israel in the early days, where all of them were wiped out. That doesn't mean that those children are going to be judged for eternity, death in the lake of fire. Like they could still be spared by the mercy of God. Those children,
they just can't propagate.
They did well.
No, I mean David, right? Isn't David's mother is from some? She's not from the tribe of.
It's highly
Judah.
debated. Yeah, it's highly debated.
So
what happened with David's mom? What's going on there?
Yeah, like his father took. He loved this. You got to read that, but yeah, it's debated. But he's definitely not like pure. Something's going on. So I don't know. I don't know. That's a crazy one.
And there's even I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say, so on the maybe the way to describe that is like those who were born Nephilim and those who became Gibborim.
Well, again, if you're in the womb and someone gives you extra hormones while you're in your mom's womb, that doesn't change. Yeah. That doesn't change your spirit nature inside of you. That doesn't change your soul, right? It just changes the body in which your soul inhabits. So it's like, that's why I was trying to make the distinction earlier that the Nephilim birthed before the flood are called unclean spirits. They're not called unclean mankind. So there's a difference. And angels are spiritual beings. They use the wombs of women to birth children. A lot of people would say, well, how could they do? And this was the actual argument back in the 1st, 2nd century. They were arguing, how could angels impregnate women? They're angels. They don't have corporeal form. They're spiritual beings. They're immaterial. They're wispy ghostlands, right? But that's not what the Bible describes. In fact, it actually describes all the biblical angels as male. And in the Book of Jubilees, chapter 15, it even says to the point they're circumcised.
Oh, dang.
That's crazy.
Because they're men. Like they look like men. They have real bodies. They eat real food. They just have a body made of a different substance. We have a body that was made from dirt, and the Spirit of God breathed into the dirt, and it became a living soul. They have a body that's made from water, breathed into the Spirit of God, and it became a living soul. That's why they're judged for their actions too. They're just made of a different material. And this is why in Luke chapter 20, verse 35, Jesus says, those who are worthy to attain to the age of the resurrection will be like the angels. And we see Jesus post-resurrection. He's our forerunner. He's our example. 1 John 2, when he appears, we'll be like him as he is. He exemplifies the body of an angel. He can appear in the locked room. Luke 24, the walk to Emmaus, he's breaking bread and disappears right in front of them.
He doesn't even look the same, does he? Because they don't recognize him.
Right.
Well, he can disguise himself, but yet he can still show scars to Thomas for convincing proofs. Right. And this is actually promised in the Apocalypse of Baruch, which is in Syriac and Greek Septuagint Bibles. Talking about at the resurrection, not only would be able to inherit the world above, which is New Jerusalem, but you also will be made likened unto the angels in former respect and glory, so that you can become all manner of lovely shapes as you desire. So in 1 Enoch chapter 20, it describes the angels being able to change their shape as they desire.
People get mad at you?
Yeah,
Bro.
why would they be?
Dude, this is crazy because
I-
I'm so pumped that you're here.
Yeah, yeah.
That's so
They get
wild.
mad because I'm going against modern Christian tradition which says everything that's considered spiritual cannot be interacted with. I mean, I don't know if you guys have been studying how bad modern seminaries have become these days, but like that's why I show people by interviewing these people on my channel. I mean, I had a guy from seminary from Australia just on like last year, and he was trying to tell me that Moses plagiarized the Hammurabi law code from ancient Babylon to make the Torah. Like he's been taught that in seminary.
Oh, that's not good.
So like, you know, the story of Mount Sinai where God and angels come down and give words of instruction to Israel.
Yeah.
He doesn't care about all that. He doesn't care that it says what it says in Exodus, Numbers, backed up by Psalm 78, backed up by Stephen's testimony in Acts, backed up by Peter's testimony in chapter 2 of Acts. He doesn't care about any of that. He believes Moses plagiarized many of those principles and law from Babylon. And I'm sitting there going, bro, what? We're like, there's like a replete amount of chapters in the Old Testament telling us God was trying to make them set apart from all the ways and instructions of the nations, and that they didn't actually have wisdom. True wisdom comes down from above, like James 3 talks about, and it's from God, right? It's not from these idols. Did you guys know that in ancient Egypt, they had this is the beginnings of Platonic philosophy. It's called negation. It's a form of apophatic negation theology. It's a form of philosophy that was attributed to Ra. And he had principles for civil expectation for the people within Egypt. And it's called Ma'at, M-A'-A-T, Ma'at. And it was their law. It was the law from Ra, from the wisdom of Ra. And did you guys know that it's associated in iconography with this? Let me skip forward a little bit. I'll show you the symbol. I'll skip back to some of this and explain, but it's too far down. Let me just say it real quick.
Okay.
If you ever heard of the word Djed, you ever heard of that word?
No.
Djed? So in ancient Egypt, there's the Djed pillar, and it was something that was highly lauded in all their, hieroglyphs and their religion as being the power source that Ra ruled over the people. And it also represented their wisdom. And they used to actually put these Djeds next to the throne of the king as a representative of the Ma'at, of the actual wisdom and law and instruction of Ra over the people that stood beside the king to show people, we appeal to the wisdom of Ra. Now, the word Djed in ancient Egyptian means serpent wisdom. So this is the Asherah poles that you see in the books of the Kings and Samuel that they're warring against, that the Israelites are worshiping Baal, and they erect the Asherah pole next to the throne of the false rebellious kings, because they've stopped appealing to the wisdom of God through his law, and they started appealing to the serpent wisdom. It's
when you hear on this topic, people will say that you shouldn't say amen because it's actually like Amun Ra. Like is there any veracity to that?
No, we get that word amen from the word, I think it's kemet in the Hebrew, which is a word that means truth. That's where that comes from the Hebrew. What you've heard is a version of what's called Zeitgeist. Do you ever remember that movie Zeitgeist?
Oh my God, yeah, that's right. It was espoused in Zeitgeist, and much of Zeitgeist has been disproven. But this is something that people still, it's like lingering information that I guess you hear once and then you go on, and every time some Christian says amen, you go, dude, bro, actually you're paying homage to Ra. I hope you know that every time you say that.
Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
Zeitgeist logic. By the way, there's an incredible documentary by Chris White on YouTube that debunks Zeitgeist. I highly encourage everybody to watch that. The Zeitgeist, the logic and the hermeneutic logic of Zeitgeist is phonetic similarities. It's like
That's all.
homophonic similarities, right? So this is why there's a funny meme that used to be passed around online making fun of Zeitgeist. And it would show a package of ramen noodles, and then it would have an equal sign, and then show the Egyptian god Ra, and you're just like, bro.
That's why there's a lot of like phonetics research that goes into things, and
It's fun, but it's like,
kind of,
okay.
but my brain turns off when I hear it. I can't follow it. It's a lot of it is like this, like you said, homophonic. I don't know if you're aware this actually comes from the word homophobic. So, it's like a lot of that. And I'm like, oh my God, like I can't even, this doesn't, I just, something screams like, hey, just stay away from this. This is, a little too dumb.
Yeah,
It's like,
it takes a little bit deeper study to look in how languages translate different words and things like that. And so, they actually in Hebrew, the word ra, R-A, is the word for evil.
Oh,
well, there you go. Right on the nose.
that seems like a good one.
Yeah,
Pretty on the nose. Kind of like Isaac is the word for laughter, and they laughed when they were promised Isaac would be born.
That's right. Yeah.
Right.
There's
I
a lot
like
of
that
Hebrew names that are just on the nose. Yeshua means salvation.
Oh, there you go. That's interesting. I don't know if you've ever seen some of the Japanese or Chinese characters, but the way that they are made up, they actually tell like these really fascinating stories, and some of the characters, the Chinese characters that talk about like the Bible or God or anything like that. There's a lot of little clues they're telling you. Like it seems like they actually knew something. Like
almost like the language, the written language at least, was influenced by some sort of Christianity or
that's
possibly
what it seems like.
Christianity.
Yeah, it's really fascinating.
But can we get back to this?
Some of these slides you skipped through.
Not just the slide, the root. We have to know.
Yeah,
we got to know about the roots.
So the roots. This is why you see in all these different cultures, giants depicted in all their hieroglyphs.
Oh yeah, so that's more than likely. What do you think about them building all the massive megalithic architecture?
Yeah, I mean, in Numbers 13, they're talking about the Amorites being like grasshoppers and being as tall as cedar trees. Cedar trees are like 30 to 60 feet tall.
Yeah.
So
and that goes back to the Inca saying that their megalithic structures were actually discovered and that they were built by a race of cannibalistic giants that were destroyed in floodwaters.
Yeah, and actually, I have a unique history with that because I'm actually Chickasaw and Cherokee. Partly, I'm not full blood, but in the Chickasaw history, they talk about the giants that inhabited the lands here that we fought against, and they were called the Lofas. That's what their name was, and they had a different name. Each of the different native tribes had a different name for them, but the Chickasaw called them Lofas. The Chickasaw is a modern branch of the ancient Choctaw. And so this was where they talked about fighting large giants, like 3 times the size of a normal man, that inhabited this entire continent.
Yeah, and I believe it was Native Americans that you get some of that lore of them smoking them out, killing them, suffocating them in cave systems. Right, I think that's where that comes from. Yeah, that's right, that's right.
Yeah, but this is all just an extension of biblical concepts because, guys, in the around the days of Christ's birth, or a little before, the Roman Emperor, what was his name? Because of Gladiator, I want to say Maximus, but it's the Roman Emperor Max something. He writes in his writings about going into Britannica, which was modern day England, and fighting a race of giants there with Roman armies. So that's around the days of Christ, the 1st century AD. But if we look at the biblical narrative, you take it all the way back to Moses and Joshua, and we're talking like 3800 BC. What was the point? They were driving them out of the land. So they drove them out of the land. Where did they go? They dispersed. They went to other places, right? And in fact, the Hornet drove most of them out before Joshua even got there, as Exodus 23 says. So there's a whole history there, and I think that's why we see stories of giants through all the nations, all over the earth.
Yep.
And this is how they're made post-flood. It's not because angels took more wives and had more babies through them, because that process was stopped. That process led to the flood, and God was like, never again.
But the teachings remained.
Do you think that process surprised God? Like, because sometimes God is surprised.
I don't hold to determinism. I don't hold to like strict forms of Calvinism. So like, I understand that God can be surprised. The language can speak about him being surprised, but like, is he genuinely? I think he's surprised when we do good. But I think genuinely, like if he made the angels and they saw the rest of creation being made, and then they're considered like the older brother who helps the younger stupid brothers that we are to like
it was
navigate
designed
this life. Yeah, that's how
been designed to that way.
yeah, like this is how the angels knew how to even teach this type of deception, because
Right.
they had a higher level of instruction because they got to watch things be created, you know. So I think that's fascinating to think about. I have a ton of questions whenever the resurrection happens. I get to ask questions in the future in heaven. I have a ton of questions for all this kind of stuff, but just with what we have here, it's not a like this. This isn't the only chapter. If you look in chapter 8 as well, it talks about these other angels that were teaching knowledge of the sun, knowledge of the moon, knowledge of the clouds, knowledge of astrology, you know, a whole bunch of other stuff. This is the beginning of idolatry. Like if you read the rest of Enoch, it says that the rebellious angels taught mankind to worship their sons, the Nephilim, and
Right.
they worship them as gods, and that's the beginning of idolatry. And so it's a fascinating concept here where the pre-flood Nephilim were direct offspring of rebellious angels. Those rebellious angels, Samyaza and his crew, were locked in Tartarus for that transgression. Azazel was left out. He then has control over a tenth of the unclean spirits after the flood, to which that's the reality we live in today. That's what Jubilees chapter 10 says. I didn't have time to go into all of it, but and that's the reality that we live in today, is that Satan and unclean spirits are trying to fool humanity, steal and destroy. And we just have to resist them and they'll flee, right? So we have power over them. They can't just hold us down and make us sin, right? They can't just hold us down and make us reject God. They entice us to do that, right? So that's why we can reject them and they can flee. But in this day, they were physically taking wives. You see what I'm saying? So this is why it's such a great transgression. And I think Azazel was wiser than all the other angels to know, well, he does commit sin. It tells him he taught mankind war.
Yeah.
The workings of metals and warfare and the antimony and things like that. It tells them he taught them, by the way, use antimony with gunpowder and different types of explosives.
It's the same thing that Odin taught, was metallurgy, war,
Yeah.
things of that nature. So there you go.
Yeah, so that's bad for sure. He's definitely going to get punished. But it's not the same transgression as like, I'm going to force myself upon you and make a baby out of you. And that's where it's very interesting that after they taught the root cutting, then they became pregnant and bare great giants. So this little sentence is not an accident that's put in here. It's telling you, it's literally giving you the prescription. Now, I don't suggest anyone try this, but it's telling you the prescription of how they made pre-flood Nephilim. Now, they were big, but here's the difference. Their furthering description is not that they were just giants, but that they were not men. They were spirits. So, like in Mormonism, they teach you after you get resurrected, you're going to inherit your own planet and make it full of spirit babies.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's not Christianity, by the way. That's not what Christianity teaches.
Shout out to the Mormons.
Yeah. Jesus teaches us at the resurrection, you're neither married nor given in marriage. You're not going to be having babies after you get resurrected. But before the flood, you had spiritual beings making other spiritual beings. This is a problem because now, what are these 200 angels that descended in the days of Noah? They're rebelling against God's instructions. They know where they came from. They know heaven above with all the other good angels that are still there, extremely powerful good angels, right? I'm theorizing that they're trying to build their own army.
This is why God has he really doesn't like the idea of fornication. Doesn't just mean premarital. That means like sexual spiritual sin. Which sounds like what this would fall under.
This also makes me think about how people claim in the deep underground military bases they'll deliver Coca-Cola and see, catch a glimpse of a giant or something like that. And if they're turning off their growth inhibitors and they've got some sort of facility down there, and when they say they drive into these places, like the tractor trailer drives into these places to drop off supplies, like the ceilings are unbelievable. Like these are massive underground military bases, and maybe they're making giants underground.
Yeah, I think Revelation 9 is not allegorical or symbolic.
Right.
I think things that come up out of the pit that look like chimeras, that are amalgamation of teeth of a lion, hair of a woman, face of a man, bodies dressed in armor like a horse with a stinger tail. I think those were hybrid chimeras specifically created to be inhabited by unclean spirits so that they can get back in the game physically and not need, because with possession, the human body and the mind, it breaks down. Sickness quickly happens. The mind breaks, sickness takes over the body. The body's not meant to be co-possessed like that, right? With an unclean spirit. We can be possessed by the clean, set apart spirit of God through the Holy Spirit, but we're not created to be possessed with an unclean spirit. This doesn't work. That's why we immediately start showing signs of psychosis and sickness and death. But I think that's been the push for a long, long time. Is the enemy is trying to get to a place where he can create some sort of synthetic body that unclean spirits can inhabit, so they can get back in the game on the surface of the earth.
Yep, that's what I'm
It's like, you're explaining cryptids, but also we're getting into like the interface with I think the interface with the human mind with like with the physical matter, like a chip of some sort or
that,
Neuralink
and those black-eyed children that abductee victims.
Let's stay on topic.
It's all on topic.
Yeah, we're right.
It's
crazy. It's everything. All right, let's
all
run
right.
through
I
this.
got a few more slides real quick. So let's just so that's where I believe this all comes into play with the root cuttings. Like in the I think it's 1918, there was a biologist in Japan that discovered gibberellins. I say discovered, he rediscovered them in modernity, and he started doing a bunch of research on them. And then the United States military in the 1940s heard about them and started researching them, and then that's literally where we got the product Miracle Grow from, is because of their research. It came out in the 1960s. And so there's a whole bunch of different types of growth hormones that affect plants and trees, and they can actually affect mankind as well. Because guys, if we believe the Bible, take it seriously, we were made from the dirt of the earth. Mm-hmm. So it's a symbiotic, compatible system that we can be affected by these growth hormones. I just don't suggest anyone try this with your unborn child. You know what I mean?
I think my growth hormone inhibitor is turned way
we're
on.
Short. We're short.
Mine was like reinforced. We're good.
Yeah, that's right.
He said he's 5'10". I was like, must be nice.
Must be nice, dude.
So if anybody wants to check out Jubilees, chapter 10 gives you a great in-depth breakdown of immediately post-flood and all the shenanigans that Noah's having to deal with, and the more origins of the unclean spirits. But I also just wanted to kind of introduce, so we've already kind of introduced the idea of the ancient nations having a syncretic view of their idolatry. They spoke different languages, but they still interacted with each other. The laws of the Babylonians that I read from earlier that talked about it was a privilege to be able to operate a flying craft. That's from a text that was discovered in ancient India in the context of trade relations with ancient Babylon. So it's just another wonderful proof, historical proof, that these nations did commingle, not just through trade, but they knew they worshiped the same gods, and they knew that they all had flying machines, quote unquote, given to them by the gods, to which they could traverse through the sky and to which the gods could traverse down to the earth. So then you got to ask yourself, like, what does that mean? Is that biblically backed? And I would say it's right there in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 10 through 12. If you look at that Greek word cosmos, it doesn't mean galaxies in outer space. It's not the Carl Sagan concept of cosmos. It's a Greek word, cosmos kratos, which means the sublunary space between the earth and the moon. And this is where the unclean spirits, the principal spirits of wickedness on high, this is their domain. So when we see the ancients talking about having flying machines in which their little g gods traversed in the air and descended down to the earth, that's consistent with the actual Greek word cosmokratos, where the sublunary space between the earth and the moon, where the astral spirits and Satan dwell. You can literally look it up in like Strong's Greek lexicon in that verse, and it'll tell you that description.
It would also imply that, like, I guess maybe the stars are not as far as I'm not so sure about like outer space, like how far stuff actually is.
Yeah.
Because in the Book of Revelation, when it says that the stars will fall from heaven and come to from the heavens to the earth, that's what they're talking about, right? So
everything I've been describing today, we're about to step on the biggest toe possible. Everything I've been describing today is nothing of this story is compatible with a evolutionary heliocentric model of creation. All of it,
flat earth,
all of it takes place inside of a firmament enclosed earth.
Everything is dome. Like the last couple days is all dome like stuff. So let's do it.
Man.
So I just did a debate 2-3 months ago with a pastor from Denver, specifically on this topic, and I go through all the scriptures that describe a circle of earth enclosed by a circular firmament, an arch-shaped circular firmament, and the Bible describes 7 layers of that firmament, actually, to which the Most High is at the top layer, and that is Deuteronomy 10:14. He is the God of Israel who inhabits the heavens of the heavens. And so what a lot of people miss when they're reading Genesis 1 is the verse 6-8, where it describes the firmament being made on day 2. And it describes that firmament, which is a structure that separates the waters that are now supported above that firmament from the earth. It calls that structure heaven.
Wait,
So the
you're
word
saying like this actual the dome like structure that is the firmament that supports the waters above, it's called heaven?
the actual structure of the firmament was given a name in verse 8 of Genesis 1, and that name is the Shomayim, the heaven. So in Genesis 1:1, when it says God created the heavens and the earth, but yet the earth was still unformed, we see the rest of the earth be formed out later. He's creating the other layers of the firmament. That's why in day 2, he only makes the firmament that encloses us. So there is multiple, according to the Bible and according to early church fathers. If you want to pull, I don't have it prepared, but you can go into Irenaeus's writings in the 2nd century. It's called Demonstration of Apostolic Preaching. He describes specifically the 7 layers of the heaven that encloses us, and how we're, like I said earlier, it's like a 7-story building with 2 basements. Right. So at the top layer is the Most High. It's kind of on the nose. That's why it's called the Most High. So there's a highest firmament in which that's where he lives. And then there's other levels. You go into other ancient writings found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, as well as in the Armenian canon from the 15th century, the Testament of Levi. And it also describes the 7 layers of the firmament and different angels in each layer and their jobs.
That's fascinating, dude. Yeah, I'm gonna. You found. I mean, I'm gonna just totally like. Watch.
Yeah, we do. In fact, there's a buddy's channel that we've been doing a biblical cosmological show for 3-4 years now. It's called Uncommon Ground, and it's on a channel. It's in my recommended channels of mine. It's called West Blaze Music. Or you could just type in YouTube Uncommon Ground, and the episodes will pop up. And it's all about biblical cosmology. So we've been doing that for a few years now.
That's something that we don't touch on too much, the whole flat earth theory, because it's gotten so bogged down in, sort of this like measurement thing, like curvature per square mile, and these like, it seems to be they did like the final experiment recently, and I'm like, I don't know, I'm not looking at
it's not showing
at any of it. No, it's not showing.
I
don't know what to make of it right now.
I debated the guy who organized the final experiment.
There's a lot of strange things going on with that. There's like photos that don't make sense, and shadows that don't make sense. I mean, what was your takeaway from that debate? How did that go?
He doesn't believe the Bible. That's all it boils down to. Like the definitions of the words in the Bible. If you redefine all the terms in the Bible, you don't have a Bible. You have your own book. You may as well be Thomas Jefferson and make up your own Bible. Like he and a bunch of other pastors that refuse to accept the definition of the word firmament and how it's used over 500 times in Scripture. He just ignores it. He's like, oh, it doesn't mean that. Well, what does it mean? Something doesn't mean that. And you're like, but show me historically. It doesn't mean this. And I go through historically and show them all, but they just reject it. It's a level of cognitive dissonance.
Do you think that the experiment was done poorly, or do you think that it was obfuscation? That's
the question.
Yeah, I actually know the guys that went down there. I've been on shows with them. I've known them and talked with them for years. I know that one of them's an unbeliever. Jaron's an unbeliever. Austin, he is a believer. I speak with him all the time. He's a great guy. And I think that I truly believe they went down there. I truly believe that I truly believe they went to a destination called Union Glacier. Is it? And I believe it's south of Chile, but is it in a separate continent on the bottom of a ball Earth? That's where I would love to find that out. I would love to do my own independent research and find that out. Did you know that after the final experiment happened, I contacted a couple different, not cruise agencies, because they're mostly all owned by the same mega corporation that go to Antarctica, but I contacted like ship agencies that allow you to charter private ships. And I asked them, and I only got response from a couple of them. And one of the responses I got back, because I wanted to see how much would it cost to charter a ship and stay along the coastline of Antarctica and circumnavigate what is called Antarctica. And how long would it take? Would it match the 11,000 kilometer prediction of the ball Earth? How long would it take? And I was told three things. For one, you'll never find a captain who will let you charter that ship and that voyage. Two, it'll take about 3 to 4 months on average, maybe longer. And three, it'll cost about $2 million if you ever find a captain that will do it for you.
I mean, it's not only one of those things is out of the question. I guess you just got to find the guy. Because $2 million, I'm sure.
Well, why would you not be able to find a captain to do that?
There's a treaty.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, dude.
Huh.
Yeah.
No elaboration. He just went, that's not going to happen.
In our first season of Uncommon Ground, episode 4, we go over all the treaty details. So the Antarctic Treaty and so I don't even want to get off the boat.
Sean, you know, we have a show to do. Like, I got to do Nephilim Death Squad, but now I got to watch all your stuff too. It's very rude.
I have to watch all your stuff now.
Quite rude of you.
We've been at this for a while, but you'll never see us in the algorithm because we constantly get demonetized. We constantly get blocked in certain countries. We constantly, even people that subscribe to us for years have been telling us, man, I haven't gotten notifications from you guys in like a year or more. Like, I thought you stopped doing videos. I'm like, nope, we're still at it. Just
shout out to your fan who suggested us, because we wouldn't.
Honestly, yeah. I mean, not to say that that's much of an indicator. I'm not very bright, but I've never heard of it. I mean, the work that you guys are doing is like it's
extensive.
It's extensive, and it's exactly.
It should have been brought up. Like, this should have been brought up at least on like you
the first like 10 episodes of what we were doing.
Tinfoil Hat or some like other shows, because like as you kind of go around this sphere of people.
Have you ever been on Tinfoil Hat with
like
Sam Tripoli?
the Confessionals, Blurry Creatures, none of these things?
You've never been on those shows?
I want to be charitable. Blurry Creatures contacted me about 1.5 years ago.
Okay.
And we privately filmed, and then nothing happened. I didn't get a word back from them because they didn't air the episode. I didn't get word back from them for probably 3 or 4 months, and then they finally said, "Oh, our computers, we spilled some liquid on our computers and lost all the files."
Honestly, that could happen.
Trick in the book.
Well, we lost one episode one time, right?
No, we didn't. We
thought we did, and then like we found it. And let me tell you, when that happens, it's like a nightmare.
I'm not going to say anything either, but let's move on. But I get where you're putting.
You need
down.
to be. I mean, honestly though, he needs to be on Tripoli's show. He needs to be on Tony's.
Well,
people need to hear this.
We'll talk to them about it.
All right,
yeah,
all right.
we'll figure this out. But let's the Golan Heights. What are we doing in Israel?
Oh yeah, this is the next slide here, and the Golan Heights is. This is from our 42 series where I'm just trying to show. I don't know if you're wanting to show it on screen or not, but
I'm trying. Look, I got it now. Here we go. Boom.
So basically, this is a labyrinth. Okay, so this is one of our really popular episodes in our 42 series where I'm just trying to draw out the. This goes into the religion of Babylon, into the philosophy aspect that is tied to a system of control that you see throughout history, and even infiltrated into modern churches and Christianity. So it's based on the concept of the labyrinth. And this is the Golan Heights. They excavated an ancient establishment there, and it was from the Amorites, and it's a labyrinth city. And
that's a city?
Yeah, that's an aerial view of a small village or whatever they excavated from the Golan Heights. Ancient Babylon, obsessed with labyrinths everywhere.
Huh.
Look like computer chips almost.
Oh yeah, that we talk about that in our IB series for sure. The Greek labyrinths, also the ancient story comes from the Minotaur of Crete. Have you ever
there you
heard
go.
The story?
Yeah, this is wasn't this also Odysseus? I don't know, was it Odysseus? This is a pretty common thing. I mean, this idea of a minotaur guarding the labyrinth. Is that where this comes from?
Yeah. So the ancient story is that the guy trying to save the girl goes into the darkened pathways of the labyrinth to fight the demon Minotaur, whom is chasing him down, and he has to get away, overcome it, save the girl. It's pretty much Super Mario World in the ancient Greece.
Oh yeah.
And this is Bowser. He's staring at, you know. So basically, this general premise then gets replicated throughout history, and we see just recently in the last 20 years they've found one of the largest Egyptian megastructures in Aswan, which is in what used to be called the Lower Kingdom or the Upper Kingdom, because it's geographically it's a higher elevation than the Lower Kingdom near Cairo. So, but this was a temple complex in front of a pyramid that was a massive labyrinth, and it's been built over the years, and they've just refound it recently. And you can watch, you go on YouTube and watch documentaries about it. We review some of the documentaries in the series when we cover this. And the entirety of this labyrinth, this is a real aerial photo. The entirety of this labyrinth is, imagine like a 4-story building, but the roofs of the different layers of the building are all made of one stone slab of stone.
Wow.
So they're doing their ground penetrating radars. There's massive columns that are filled with Egyptian hieroglyphs, all covering, but the entire thing is designed as a massive, large labyrinth. And the deeper that they've excavated and go into the deeper inner layers of the labyrinth, according to historians and according to what they're looking at with the GPR, is you see more temples of the Egyptian gods represented inside there. It's massive. It's like multiple football fields. It's massive, right? So this is an ancient depiction of it from the drawings, and that what you see on the top of it is a Greek settlement that was built over it, which, these are just crappy buildings on the top, but below, this is one large solid slab of rock that they made the roofs with.
Do you think the Greek settlement would have been aware that they were on top of this thing?
According to historians, everybody was aware of what this was.
All right.
Yeah, I grew up. So, go ahead.
Supposedly, this was like a very lauded, like, I'm going to show you some quotes here in just a minute, where they thought this was more magnificent than any other thing in any of the pyramids that they knew about. This was supposedly the most magnificent thing, and it was a part of the priestly district. So it was basically operated by the priests of ancient Egypt.
This is also like what they found underneath the pyramids now of Giza, right?
That's
Those
right.
columns. They were like, oh, look what we found. But apparently, this is the same thing.
Yeah,
Not
this
unprecedented.
is like what we would call southern Egypt, like closer down towards Ethiopia and Eritrea, but they used to call it the Upper Kingdom. So here we got Herodotus talking about this. He says that this was they made a labyrinth a little above Lake Moeris and situated it near what's called the City of the Crocodiles. He says he saw it for himself, and his deeds a wonder past words. For if one to collect together all of the buildings of the Greeks and their most striking works of architecture, they would all clearly be shown to have cost less labor and money than this labyrinth.
Wow.
Yet the temple at Ephesus and that in Samos are surely remarkable. The pyramids too were greater than words can tell, and each of them is the equivalent of many of the great works of the Greeks. But the labyrinth surpasses the pyramids also.
Wow.
He says that it has 12 roofed courts, doors facing one another, 6 to the north, 6 to the south, a continuous line. I'm just going to skip through some of this. The officials, the Egyptians, entirely refused to show us these, saying that they were in them. The coffins of the kings who built the labyrinth at the beginning, and also those of the holy crocodiles. So this is Herodotus trying to take a tour of this thing, but not being allowed. Yeah, he can't see all of it.
Yeah.
He says, so we speak from hearsay of these underground places, but what we saw above ground was certainly greater than all human works. The passages through the rooms and the winding going-ins and outs through the courts, their extreme complication caused us countless marvelings as we went through the court and the rooms into the pillared corridors, leading into other courtyards and other rooms. The roof of the whole is stone, as the walls are. The walls are full of engraved figures. Each court is set round with pillars of white stone, very exactly fitted. At the corner where the labyrinth ends, there's a pyramid 240 feet high. So inside the labyrinth underground is a pyramid 240 feet high.
My
Crazy.
God.
So a 24-story building is a pyramid size down. Like, that's crazy, guys. Like, this is massive, massive work.
24-story building.
Yeah. Like, that's just insane. And then, of course, he says this was built near this great Lake Moeris. beside the labyrinth was built. The circuit of the lake is the distance of about 420 miles, which is equal to the whole seaboard of Egypt. So there apparently used to be a massive lake right next to this thing as well. And we have more Strabo, first century. He talks about it as well. In addition to the things mentioned, this Nome district has the labyrinth, which is the work comparable to the pyramids, the tomb of the king who built the labyrinth near the first entrance to the canal, and on the preceding 30 to 40 stadia, one comes to a flat trapezium-shaped palace, which is a village and also a great palace composed of many palaces, and many in number as there were nomes districts in earlier times. And he's just explaining like the surrounding city that's been built on top of this thing. And then, of course, talks about the crypts. They're winding, numerous passages communicating with one another. No stranger could find his way either into any court or out of it without a guide. So they took this so seriously. One of the greatest ancient megalithic works in Egyptians' history is a labyrinth, to which you needed help getting in and out, to which there's pyramids to the gods everywhere throughout there, and to which many of the ancients claimed that there were, the evil spirits would chase you while you walked through it.
Right. So that brings me to my question about why the labyrinth. I'm sure that it's got something to do with spiritual implications. Is it trapping spirits in there? I mean, why go through all? It's one thing to build this unbelievable, expansive structure underground, a 240-foot pyramid, all these, pillars, and bury the kings who started it. But why the labyrinth?
Is it a labyrinth, or is it like a complex geometrical pattern that needs to be a certain way for whatever reason, but also a labyrinth.
Yeah, I'm going to show you real quick. I'm going to try to share this real quick. I just Googled this.
I wonder too, if they said that the kings that who built it are buried down there. Are those kings normal sized people?
Probably not.
Gigantic.
So this is inside churches and outside of churches all across the world.
So that's not necessarily a labyrinth as much as it's like an energy conducting shape. This is something that you actually see on computer chips and things of that nature. I mean, labyrinth.
Something that you see on crop circles as well.
Maybe I'm confusing the word labyrinth with maze. A maze is designed to entrap the person who's trying to solve it, or maybe a labyrinth is designed to entrap energy.
So as these are described according to how you, like if you went to this cathedral on the right hand side with the tan floor and the labyrinth at the back of you can see the front of the cathedral, you can see the chairs for the congregants, and then at the back of it is the labyrinth where they can walk the labyrinth. And what they say that you're supposed to do, no, it's not to entrap you, it's a meditation exercise, to where they say, and this is the correlation of the ancient concept from Greece. It was there you had to overcome your demons to escape. And so what they teach you in these modern practices is that once you enter in the labyrinth, you are supposed to look within and try to find the things that you're struggling with. And by the time you get to the center and you make your way out, you're giving it over to the universe and to your spiritual guides so they can take these burdens from you and that you can overcome these issues in your life. So it's now turned into a very tame meditative practice inside of modern Christian circles. But the concept is you're not asking for God to heal your heart. You're actually supposed to look into your heart to find the wisdom instead of looking to God's word for wisdom. And you're supposed to look to some unnamed spiritual guide to help you once you are ready to release these things that are burdening you, as opposed to Christ saying, come to me, my yoke is light, my burden is easy. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Put your trust in me, follow me, lay your life down to follow me. So it's a very deceptive ancient philosophy that has been infiltrated into modern Christianity, but this is not where it stops, though. So
I'm just saying, how perfect is it that they put it at the back, so you have to pass through that in order to get to Christ, who is probably shown, like right there by the altar once you get past. So it's like, this is like a little stumbling block that they've placed before you can actually get to what you should be doing. That's nefarious.
It's really strange, actually, that they would do this inside of a church. There's a Catholic church in my town that has one of these out in the courtyard, and it's not, in my opinion, it's not cool. But let me show you this real quick. This is from the same series that we talk about this, and I try to explain, because this is historically, like I showed you the Golan Heights settlement, it's also historically in in the Bible in a way that we've just never been told. So let me put this in the studio for you to look at real quick. So in a 13th century and 14th century Bible, the depictions, both of a Farhi Bible and a Taj Torah Bible from Yemen, both of them depict ancient Jericho as a labyrinth city.
Oh, that's fascinating.
So do you remember in the story of Jericho, not only are they told to walk around it one day a week and then 7 times on the 7th day, but they're not supposed to fight it. They're supposed to shout at it. And then the earthquake is what disassembles the walls, and then the walls fall outward so they can walk straight up into it. And this is consistent because this was actually a military concept of like, it was very hard to penetrate the city and take the princes of the city and all that, because you're designed into a death trap spiral, and they're just shooting down from you from above as you walk through the city. And you can't just go straight towards a specific army. You have to actually walk in this winding pattern, to which depends on how the city was built. You may not even go the right way. And then you just go into a trapped death zone where they're just going to slaughter you because you ran into a dead end. So this wasn't just a philosophy. Like, this was Babylon's war doctrine as well, was the labyrinth. So from a philosophic, spiritual standpoint, the idea was you must enter the labyrinth to show your value and worth and overcome the demons. But by the way, you truly never get out of the labyrinth. It's a maze designed to entrap you.
So a war tactic that is central to Babylon's, workings, and then also the actual inner workings of the city of Jericho are now on the floor in many churches.
So just as I talked about previously about the philosophy that has infiltrated the churches and getting people to stop believing parts of the scriptures in very specific areas so that there's room for other interpretations, it all leads you into a non-productive way, to which this is why there's nothing but argumentation. You don't even understand the end of the story anymore. And this is why we named ourselves Kingdom in Context. Because if you don't understand the kingdom of God is a real place that's going to come down and sit on the earth, and that's how we rule over the nations, that's how there's peace on the earth, because you've already taken the literal nature out of anything that God says is his house or his ministering servants or your promised body after the resurrection, and you think it's all Casper land, immaterial wispiness, that's some Catholic living in the clouds. So the philosophy has infiltrated itself greatly, and I think it's an amazing concept where we serve a God of the Bible who's telling the Israelites, do not turn to the right or the left. I will make your paths straight. What does he do out before they even get to Jericho? He parts the Jordan River so they can walk through on dry land. You guys remember that in Joshua?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The priest hold the Ark of the Covenant in the center, and it parts the water, and it stacks up next to them, and they walk by. And then they're looking at a labyrinth city up on the hill that they have to go fight, which is a fortified city. And he goes out and tells them, before we go fight them, go over here, and everyone that's not circumcised, circumcise yourself. And then it's just kind of a gruesome detail, but he says that the circumcision pieces became a mound because there's a lot of people.
Yeah.
So I can't even imagine the smell.
Saying, I'm not doing it.
So,
oh God.
So that circumcision, and then they named that place where they all circumcised the men Gilgal. Do you know the ancient word Gilgal in the Greek is the word for a wheel, a circle? So here they are, and there was other labyrinth cities in Israel called Gilgal, where where Baal was being worshipped. So here they are staring at Jericho, a fortified city that represents the Amorites, the Philistines, the Canaanites, all the people that were usurpers into the land that was promised to Shem. And this is why it's even called the land of Canaan. So this is a deep cut into the history of the Israelite literature. If you go into Jubilees chapter 8 and 9, it tells you after the flood, the sons and grandsons of Noah, they struck up a covenant, if you will. They struck up an oath, a pledge with Noah about how they were going to get different pieces of the land after the flood. And Canaan was given a piece of land in the Western Atlantic side of Africa, what we would probably call like Namibia today. That was where it says that he was apportioned a piece of land, but he says he didn't want it. Instead, he wanted the piece of land that was given to Shem, which he then went up by sedition and warfare. He took it from his uncle Shem, and that's why it's called the land of Canaan by the time we get to the book of Exodus.
Wow.
You know, I do want to say, I know you said that people get mad at you, and you know, we're not mad at you, but I realize, like, I don't know that we have any Catholics left that watch this show.
Yeah, they take a beating.
They take a beating, and it's not. We're just exploring things, and it just so happens that, like, over and over again, you keep looking over to like the Catholic Church and going, "Whew, what's going on over there?"
I listen, at the church we go to, you got trannies talking in tongues, so it's a little different. I mean,
I guess we're not. I mean, sort of, kind of.
I saw a podcast just recently. It was with I don't know if it was Candace Owens or if it was I can't remember who it was, but they had a guest on that had been a part of the intelligence agencies, and they were working. And I apologize, I don't have the citation or the podcast link to take.
Oh, that's okay. You don't have to do that on this show.
Yeah. So basically, they said they used to work with the intelligence agencies and that they were cooperating with Mossad at one point, and that they were talking to the Mossad agent, and the Mossad agent somehow just offhandedly said, "Oh yeah, well we keep tabs on like all types of culture in the United States."
Mm-hmm.
And the guy was like, "You do? Why would you keep tabs on the culture in the United States?" And the Mossad agent, they get to talking, and he goes, "Oh yeah, we know that 88% of all Catholic bishops and priests in the United States are."
That's a staggering number. What?
No, that's probably accurate.
I didn't go to church growing up, and so I don't have like the context or the you know the relationship with the church like that, like my, you know, childhood to look back on and go, well, that guy was a little bit, you know, weird. That is astounding. 88%. That's wow.
So the reason I'm saying what seems like a bunch of, like, hopefully if people listen to this episode, they may listen the second time and think from this perspective, listening through a second time, that I'm not just mentioning these things randomly. I'm not just trying to say, oh, here's a cool stat from history that you guys might like. All of this is the deception we're battling today.
Mm-hmm.
So the mafia is a worldwide agenda trying to make everybody, and it's weird. It seems weird. It seems counterproductive to the survival of humanity, actually, right?
Right.
Because, you know, unless China creates those pod babies with those robots. But basically, we're talking like, how in the world are we pushing an agenda where people themselves and decide to feign the act of reproduction with a biological form that can't reproduce because it's the same gender, amongst the thousands of genders. So why would they push this worldwide? Well, not only, you know, I'm sure you guys know the Baphomet, but also the ancient god in Egypt, Atum, which is another representation of Satan, said that he was a god that could change genders at will. Now, this is where I would suggest if this is a representation of a fallen angel who's fooling the people as this god Atum in ancient Egypt, that he's not technically changing his gender, but he is doing exactly what angels can do. They can change their forms as they desire to you know, like the angels that showed up with Abraham in Genesis 18, or, you know, Judges chapter 2, the angel Lord shows up and talks to the people at Bethel. He's not standing there with 6 wings, just magnificently filling the space, looking like an amazing, awe-inspiring angel. Like, he just shows up as a man and talks to him, but they know who he is. You know what I'm saying? Same way with like a Judges 13, I think it is, with Samson's parents. The wife, Manoah, she just meets a guy. She's like, I met this man. He's really cool. And she goes and tells her husband. They come back, and after talking with him, they do the sacrifice, and the angel jumps into the fire of the sacrifice and ascends into heaven. And then they realize, oh my goodness, we just saw a holy one, right? So like, he didn't present himself as an angel with wings and shining with glory and all that kind of stuff, because they don't have to, because they have. So this is where I would just encourage people to study the physics of water and how it's amazing. And scientists are still trying to figure out what is actually water, right? Like, what is this stuff that Why is the word in Hebrew shomayim the word for a covering of water? That's the word heaven. The firmament
Where
upholds water above us that covers over us. And that's the word for water. And why are ministering angels described as ministers of flame and fire? How does that anything to do with water? Oh, lo and behold, at the right frequency, water ignites into fire.
Yeah, we were learning that about the ability to boil water with frequency. Remember that? It was like yesterday or something.
a bell, yeah,
A bell could
or even a
boil
certain
water.
like a certain curvature will
Yeah.
boil water. It's a water's coming up again a lot as the show evolves. Like we're doing a documentary on a deep underground well that is hotly. I mean, there's a lot of contention around it, but yeah,
So
dude.
this is where I read John 3:5 when Jesus says to Nicodemus, if you want to inherit the kingdom of God, you must be born of water and spirit. The average person, the Catholics especially, will say, well, that's just baptism. But I suggest we get new bodies like the scriptures tell us. 1 Corinthians 15, it's sown mortal, it's raised immortal. It's sown earthy, it's raised spiritual.
It makes a lot of sense, man. It does. Wow.
So I'm mentioning the concepts of ancient Babylon, its power, the little g gods interacting with men on the earth. I'm mentioning these concepts of how all the ancient nations by different languages worship the same core pantheon of gods, of which Satan is at the top. He's the only rebellious angel still out. And I'm mentioning all these things to show his law, which feigns as a poor replacement for God's law. His wisdom, which is a poor replacement for God's wisdom, is nothing but a death spiral that entraps you with his demons.
Man, that is
and this is why God emphatically tells us all throughout the scriptures, I give you good instruction, choose life or death.
It's also kind of funny. Again, another side thought is that, like, you know, the FBI symbol for is this like
the spiral,
Yeah,
which
it's the
keeps
same
coming
sort of-
up over and over again. Yeah, yeah. And it's funny because Jesus Christ is the narrow path, right?
Yeah, it's like this. That's the way.
Man.
Not like this.
Yeah.
Very interesting stuff, dude.
Yeah, so this is a little taste, I suppose, of what we talk about. I mean, we do a whole several shows on Apollyon himself. I emphatically believe the scriptures directly tell us that the first beast is Apollyon. We talk about that in both series. We talk about the second beast, which I never hear churches talk about. No one ever seems to talk about the second beast. He's literally the one that starts killing people. Like, he's the one that enforces the image of the first beast that people should worship it. So, like, I talk about who he is historically, why I believe that, how I make that case, how it's literally in your website URL. His name is in many of the URLs in the programming code, because it's
Who Apollyon's name or the second beast?
The second beast. Yeah,
Is in the man, he's just
Right,
doing.
well,
Look what
we
he's
gotta
doing.
leave
What's
some,
going
let's
on
leave some
here?
meat on. Hopefully you'd be interested in coming
Would you come back?
Would you come back? Would you talk to us again?
yeah, y'all are good people. Yeah.
Oh man, that is really interesting. All right, well, Sean, where can everybody go? Because they're going to be looking after this show, and they're going to want more. And you've got a whole lot more to offer. So where can everybody find all your work?
It's just Kingdom in Context on YouTube, Rumble, and Facebook.
Context. Man,
Yep.
Kingdom in Context.
Guys,
Yes, pretty
how
simple.
long have
It's
you been
actually-
doing this?
It's called KIC. Is actually technically the name now, but
How long have you been doing this?
2018, we started the channel, and then we started our Investigating Babylon series in 2020, and then our 42 series in 2022, I believe. And so we're still in the middle of our 42 series. I still have like another 12 installments to go, to where we, like, if you click on posts.
Yeah, how often are you guys releasing content on any
Scroll.
specific topic? Let's say the
This is
Babylon series.
Well, we're done with the Investigating Babylon series. People can watch that in its entirety, but this is the schedule for us finishing the 42 series. And so the next one is going to be Woman Riding the Beast. So it's actually, the Investigating Babylon series goes from 1 to 21, and the 42 series goes from 21 down to 1.
Okay.
And so we've already done 21, 20, 19, 18, 17, 16.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. And Woman Riding the Beast is all about the Catholic Church coming up soon.
Yeah, that's what people say, and the Catholics
Fascinating.
don't
I'm sorry,
like that.
I delete this video from YouTube, but it'll be back up. I'll give you all the links when everything is done and settled. And
Yeah. If you're interested in
because
sharing this,
we have also been kicked off of YouTube, or at least threatened to be kicked off. So we go through a very heavy editing process.
Yeah.
In order to stay alive, and maybe we could reach the amount of followers.
All of the things that we
here.
say too, it was just like we were just like, hey, I wonder if this kind of water might be good for you, and we won't even dare say what kind of water, but they were like, you're off of YouTube now, so we're very careful these days. But man, thank you for this has been incredible. It's always nice when somebody shows up with this much well-researched gravy, and especially, I mean, that this is like one of those that's going to require a second watch through. Especially that bit about all of the wild Vedic, schematics. I mean, that's literally what they were. They were schematics for. Sean, thanks a lot, man. Thanks for reaching out. Thanks for coming on, and thank you to whoever planted that little seed, because I'm excited. I'd love to have you back, and I'm hoping that we could do some more fun stuff in the future.
They're calling you the White Ed Mabry. It's very funny.
Oh man,
These people, they're horrible people.
They're horrible people. I hope not. Please, if you go over to Sean's channel, be respectful, be normal.
Yeah, wear a
Can
shirt.
you guys do that? Can you be normal? It would be lovely. I guess that's it. Do you want to?
That's it, guys.
Okay.
It's been a wonderful day. We will catch you again fairly soon, and until next time,
You got to remove yourself.
Yeah, this is
Unbelievable.
wild. Don't forget to obey, submit, and comply. We will catch you.
The greatest hypnotist on planet Earth is a oblong box in the corner of the room. It is constantly telling us what to believe is real.
You can persuade them that what they see with their eyes is what there is to see. You can't. Because they'll laugh in the face of an explanation that